Hey everyone, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy the audiobooks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support us further, consider becoming a Patreon member. As a member, you'll gain the ability to request the next part of a novel audiobook I've uploaded, depending on your Patreon tier.
Year 76 Month 10 continued. So, now that things are returning back to normal for me, somewhat, is to focus on the volcano. The volcano clearly is a point of great interest to me, as it generates so much heat and energy, something I would need for my valley. But the next phase involves defeating the magma monsters that spawn near the volcano, and protecting my trees. And from the initial skirmishes between the beetles and the magma monsters, they didn't do well at all. It takes about 5 beetles to beat one magma monster, because the magma monsters are able to burn the beetles when they get near, and the beetles attack by ramming the magma monsters with their horns. So bad matchup, really. And that's one problem I need to fix. I can't manually go in and use root strike on the magma monsters. Okay, actually I can, but it's just that, if I do that personally then I don't have time to do other stuff, so I need the beetles or whatever solution I come up with, to be able to act somewhat autonomously. Horns, any ideas? Research fire-resistant protective shells and magical horns for more power. That'll take 3 and 6 months, Master. Trevor giving the numbers, but that'll delay our other research on further enhancements to the tree's resistances. Ugh. I want all the research. This feels like playing those games with huge tech trees, and you just want to choose all of them available options, because in some ways, you do need them all. Recommendations. We could spread out our time on both of them. Trevor and Dimitri said in unison. But it'll be a 2-month delay for the other 2 projects. No. I want them to. So the next step is more forest mines, but clearly I am limited in this aspect. Are you willing to consider my help now? Alexis speaks up. I'll think about it. Year 76 Month 11. Winter. Well, it's rather comfortable this winter, thanks to the hot water piped from the lake, and my new winter resistance aura. The new freecans are doing well, fortifying themselves, and they did manage to build up a large stockpile of food. It seems their indecision led to Sulla denouncing the truce, and now they even accuse the new freekas of collaborating with the enemies. So the truce is off. But even though the truce is off, it did not descend into war directly. After all, Sulla is still tied up in their conflict with Nung and Takta, and the winter also severely impairs their ability to wage any assault on New Freeka. It's actually a norm in the world, that war is declared but actual fighting does not happen until some time later, and for certain human nations, there are even rules of engagements that the rulers follow, or they find themselves having awarded cursed titles for falling out of favor of the human war gods. Gaia, apparently, is one such god that demands certain rules of engagement. That battles are fought on open fields, each battle starts with a commander leading the charge, there is clear publicly declared casus belli behind the conflict, and that a large prayer is held before each large war. Strangely enough, despite how restrictive it sounds, Gaia as a god, participates rather directly in terms of larger conflicts, often granting commanders tremendous gifts. It is said that if heroes, the singular most powerful humans in the world failed, they would turn to the commanders of Gaia to defend the world, though, in reality, there is still a huge gap in their power. Gods in the world interact with it in a few ways, one through gifts, and there are rules around such gifts, that all gods follow, even the dark gods native to the world. Well, I partly learned this from Alexis, because Alexis's first acts when coming to this world, is actually to figure out how to go back, so she went on head-on diving into books on gods, magic and all that. But of course, there are restrictions on going back, and one of those restrictions, placed by the million-headed Hydra that watches over Earth, is that the souls return clean. In short, they return without their powers or memories, though they may still experience dreams which reminds them of their past lives. So back to war. The new freekas are of course annoyed by the development, but knowing that Sulla's engagement won't happen so soon, they decide to fortify themselves, to prepare for the coming conflict. Despite the cold winters, New Freeka's population is a respectable 35,000, and so, they have the ability to field close to 13,000 fighters to the battle, which is a decent fighting force. Sulla may easily send 50,000, or perhaps 100,000, but they are a far larger state with more competing priorities, and an ongoing war with the Nung and Tacta. So unless Sulla really provokes them, they may just let this little conflict carry on for a bit more. Yvonne, though, is still trying to avoid war, so her negotiators now are instead focusing on who's the real culprit of the blood blizzard, which, increasingly, is pointing towards the acts of a terrorist group that infiltrated the senior army leadership of all three nations in order to carry out such a large sacrifice. In short, even if they did find who was behind this, the emerging fact still points to all three nations contributing to the blood blizzard, and none of the three nations will want to implicate themselves in the spell, so the war's just going to go on. So, too bad. This week, I converted one of the large subsidiary trees into a training room at Lausanne's requests. The weather outside is now far too cold for combat practice, so their sword-fighting practice goes indoors. She's going to turn 8 soon, and despite her earlier lack of talents, she somehow managed to pick it up. Perhaps through a combination of a dream tutor and power leveling, she did acquire sufficient sword-fighting skills to have simple spars with Jura. And she has also started to gain levels. There seems to be some kind of barrier from gaining levels for very young children, but this level barrier is inconsistent and varies across races. Out of curiosity, I had her dip into one of the biolabs, just to check on her. I had a theory previously that young children, where their spring that connects their body to the soul, and vice versa, is not yet fully mature, then that person is unable to gain levels. I mean, prior to this I could not even have an assessment of Lausanne's estimated soul rank, but now I could. And my intuition is right. Indeed, her spring, the fountain which produces mana, now has a consistent shape. This raises a big set of questions, as in, what exactly influences the size and shape of the fountain? I also have a few thoughts about this. One is whether all souls are the same, but there is some other thing which acts as the link between the soul and the body, and that then influences a person's full potential, or if the souls are different, then there should be a way to manipulate and change the qualities a soul have. Master, you're using my root brain to augment your theories again, Trevor grumbles. Ah yes, it seems I sometimes unknowingly tap into the processing power of the trees to think. But this has the effect of taking away processing power from Trevor, which then impairs his performance. Think of the root brain complex as a computer processor, and if I'm using it, Trevor can't. I should have more root brains. It's logical, no. I come from a world of quad cores and more. It would be fascinating if I somehow stitch all these root brains together into some kind of collective superbrain, no. Special project unlocked. The Grand Mind Tree significantly boosts tree-related research output and grants wider understanding of soul magics. Gains additional psychic-type magical abilities. Requires 10x root brain complexes, and 1 ton of gold and 1 ton of quartz crystals. Once all prerequisites are complete, construction will take 1.5 years. Ah. My own supercomputer. Well, kind of. Alexis, you're redundant if I get this. No. Alexis sighs, but then she pauses, but you're not going to get it so quickly. It'll still take time. So assign me to a biolab, please. You're going to have to wait probably 2 to 3 years before you achieve it. Maybe more. She's right though. It's going to take a while. Construction of the root brain complex itself requires 10x blood crystals, and 50x fresh animal heads, and so 10 root brains means a whole lot of blood crystals, and that means money, which we probably do not have. You're right, Alexis. But I still don't really trust you, so I've decided that I will merge you with a biolab someday, but you will be watched and observed. That's okay. I rather tinker in the biological structure of trees and beetles than being stuck in this dark and dreary place. Can't you do something about how gloomy your soul realm is? A biolab it is then. It's a transit lounge for souls to reincarnate. Not helpful for it to be a pleasant place to be. I can't have too many souls not wanting to move on. Well, to be fair, the souls only linger around for 6 months to a year, and after that they will move on. The soul realm, whether pleasant or not, has no influence on this. I got sidetracked again. I mumble to myself and resume watching Lausanne. Her body's really young, after all she's only 7 turning 8. All the dream tutor has given her a rather varied set of skills, and so she's actually pretty versatile as a person. She still wants to be a hero, but lately she's starting to understand that there's a gap between herself and the true heroes that could change the world with their power, though some days, she still believes she can stand up there. She'll have to gain a lot more levels if she wants to. Only with levels can she even think of standing up to a hero, who's blessed by the heavens. TreeTree, do you have powers to make me stronger? I do. The ginseng tree, and it grants a permanent boost. But the problem is that they just keep dying, usually after their first unlock. If I grow a ginseng tree inside me, maybe that'll work. And it doesn't help that they die within 2 to 3 months in this cold weather, so I'll have to wait till the wizards actually manage to weaken or dispel this cold weather, before resuming my replanting of my 3 ginseng trees. I do, but you'll have to wait. Okay. I'll need all the help I can get. Lausanne raises her hand, like hurrah. Uncle Jura says heroes are super strong, and I'll need all the blessings the world can give me to be as strong as them. That's actually possible. Perhaps throughout the world there are various permanent blessings, similar to ginseng trees. If a person could gather enough of them, they could be as strong as heroes. I think I should go on a journey someday, with Uncle Jura and Mom. To get those blessings. That's a good idea, Lausanne. Jura's healed, but his bones still need to fully recover. So he's just doing simple exercises, and relying on Bamboo to provide training to Lausanne. Bamboo and Jura actually manage to achieve some kind of bond, and Bamboo now manifests itself as a flexible wooden arm for Jura, so Jura's back to being two-handed. Kinda like a prosthetic but with a summon. Quite a cool outcome actually, I frankly didn't think of that. It's not as good as a real arm, of course, but as workarounds go, it's pretty good since Bamboo and Jura as a familiar has a mental link. Bamboo is due for upgrade too. Yes, so is Horns. I think I'll go on a journey when I turn 15. That's when they say we're old enough to start traveling. Then Uncle Jura can go with me. I nod. Lausanne talks to me a lot, and that means she listens to my thoughts about the future. Strangely, I think this means I've influenced her to think about what she wants to do, unlike the rest of them who tends to look at things at a shorter time frame. How's Brislock and Wallen doing? They're working in New Frika. I think Brislocka's working in a shop selling potato breads. Wasn't she doing something else? Well. Not everyone has ambitions of the grand kind, and that's not a fault. Wallen's working in the treasurer's office as an administrator. He's learning how to read and write too. Literacy. It's a mix and match in this world, most of the time it is taught by a village elder in the small villages, and to some extent it is a valuable skill, useful in government matters and trade. Some cultures have stronger emphasis on reading, some less. Elves surprisingly do not have much emphasis on writing and reading, as their long lives tend to mean they will pick it up over the years. They also seem to favor oral traditions, having an appointed old one in every village to remember the traditions and ceremonies. Certain subtleties that the written word cannot capture. I should learn to read and write too. A hero must be smart. Knowing how to read does not make you smart, Lausanne. Is it? But at least I'm not stupid. Not knowing how to read does not make you stupid. Less stupid. She mumbles. I can work if I know how to read and write. Good for traveling. Good point. Writers are useful, they are often paid to write letters and messages. Some writers double up as messengers and sort of mailmen, and this is usually a relatively good way to gain admission into a merchant association or guild. Ever thought of being a merchant? That's a good way to travel the world without involving yourself in too much fighting. A hero as a merchant. Lausanne slumps, but then she is actually thinking about it. Yeah. Why can't heroes be merchants? She's seriously thinking about it. To be fair, I haven't heard of a merchant hero before. Their neutrality kinds of make it hard for them to play the role of a hero, which has to take a side. Lozan, rest time's up. Practice. Jura calls, and he picks up a wooden practice sword and shield. Thanks to Bamboo's augmented limb, he can now teach Lozan the standard sword and shield method of fighting. A hero as a merchant, it's still on her mind, but then she stands and rejoins Jura in the middle of the training tree. Essentially, it's a large empty room in a tree. As Jura and Lozan resume their regular practice, I then turn my attention to the volcanic area once more. Some of the magma monsters are getting a little bit aggressive, and I have to periodically kill them to protect the subsidiary trees there. The volcano is an active volcano, its caldera partly blown apart, so there's a part where there is liquid lava flowing out of it. As is the norm in the world, this leads to magma monsters spawning, and from what the beetles have seen further inside, there are larger magma monsters closer to the caldera. So far they are territorial, so they don't seem to attack us if we do not approach. Master, it is time I get an upgrade. Horn suggests. He's fully recovered now, so he is due for an upgrade, since he capped out at level 20 earlier. Bamboo too, so I took the chance to review their upgrade requirements. Horns, level 20 Beetle Knight. Upgrade options available. Blue Baron Beetle, 5x blue crystals, 30x almost complete skeleton of a large animal gains commander effects, which grants nearby beetle increased abilities. Black Beetle Dark Knight, 10x obsidian rocks, 20x large claws gains combat skills. Bamboo, level 20 Wood Bear Eidolon. Upgrade options available. Blue Armor Path, 50 small copper ingots and 5 medium red rubies needed gains defensive abilities. Black Claw Path, 50 small iron ingots and 5 medium onyx needed. Gains offensive abilities. Trevor, level 27 Forest Mind. Will be unlocked at level 30. Black Skull Shell, 10x bone of a wyvern, 1x heart of a lion and 50x bones of a lizard. Gains a ghostly projection. All these upgrades impose a lot of resource requirements. So I'll need more resources. You require more minerals. Dimitri chimes in, with a Russian accent. It reminds me of a wraith. Or is that a Terran Goliath? Ah yes. You've been taking in a bit too much of my game references. Ah whatever. If I want these resources, I'll get them from Newfrika. The tree spirit demands what? The advisors look concerned when Yvonne shares my resource demands with the rest of her council. Blood crystals, gold, quartz crystals, copper and iron ingots, rubies, onyx, blue crystals. Yvonne repeats, but she clearly understands their concern. One of Yvonne's closest advisors then clarifies, it's more of a request than a demand, right? Yvonne shrugs, I'm not too sure if I understand the tree spirit correctly, but I think it sounds more like a demand than a request. Should we? One of the advisors look really worried. It feels a bit like extortion. I believe most of you have seen the tree spirit's combat abilities, and its incredible abilities throughout this valley. The recent hot water spring around the Tree of Prayer is a recent addition. It's hard though, those goods are not regular stuff. They are jewels or crystals. I mean, even the cheapest of those are the blood crystals and the quartz. The tree's asking for a lot. Well, the recent burst in natural growth, and the hot water in the valley helped us a lot too. And it quickly seems clear that it's divided into two camps, one who thinks that my demands are reasonable given my assistance to their survival, and there's a bunch who thinks it's excessive, and they should only give what they can manage. Yvonne mostly stayed out of it, asking the council to decide, as her soul is contracted to me, she says she is not a neutral party to the decision. Of course, from my point of view, I know that these people need a bit of encouragement. So I decide to withdraw all the hot water piping into the Newfrika, and so in this cold month, they had a really cold week. After that week, they met up again and agreed that it is best not to offend me, so decided to support my demands. I think between Sulla and me, they've decided to be on my good side. Year 76 Month 12. Monsters slain. You've gained a level. Level 129. You've gained a new skill, Training Treehouse. Training Treehouse improves experience gain, skill gain chances, and reduces injuries significantly. Ah. This sounds like an extension of my training room. Seriously, this system leans heavily of the nurturing, growing side of things, but really sparingly grants me offensive abilities. I suppose if I want to work around the tree, I need to think like the system. If I was designing a system for a tree, what would I think about? My suspicions is that a system in which a sole tree is at the center of focuses on a few core principles. Again, this is just a theory that I have, based on what I experienced so far. Grow, nurture and endure. This is the first core principle with any tree. The logical driver behind any tree is to grow, to expand, and so, I should get a wide range of abilities that promote growth, and allow me to endure wide variety of damage, and still recover. And with it, the ability to support young things, and also build an ecosystem with the tree as the foundation. Enhance and adapt. A tree that expands would need to adapt to various environments, and react to the challenges that are unique to this world. This is the evolutionary, research side of what I suspect is a natural inclination. If trees are unable to react in a world where magic is native, then trees would quickly go extinct. So, I believe the trees in this magical world have natural adaptation abilities superior to that of our world, and the system supports them. Then, there's the soul abilities which arise as a soul tree. These are not natural tree abilities, but exist because I am a soul-related kind of entity, and so the system has to grant me abilities that are natural for a soul tree to have. Thinking along these lines, if I intend to get more offensive abilities, it would grow as a result of working towards more enhancement and adaptation, as a result of a tree being forced to defend itself. In other words, to game the system to give me offensive abilities, I must put myself into a situation where self-defense is a required adaptation. Now how do I go about doing that? Never mind, I quickly upgrade that empty training room into this training treehouse, so that Lausanne can benefit from it. Oh, and I begin to test out those carnivorous plants that I got. They function more like traps, really, and they spring out to eat anything about the size of wolves. Which is pretty good. But the drawback is the digestive period is quite long, so essentially, if a huge swarm of demon hounds come along, they'll be full very quickly. So useful under certain circumstances, but its use in a large-scale combat is probably limited. If anything, what I would need is a fire-breathing tree. I mean, imagine it, if a tree can breathe fire, or even poison, that would be pretty useful. And such options are indeed available on my research options. Being frustrated at how slow my research is, I eventually decide to take a chance on Alexis. If you try anything funny, I will kill you. Understood, but I am soul contracted to you, so don't worry about it. We're aligned, trust me. I can't. But I'll give you the opportunity to prove me wrong. I initially would have preferred Mila, but the soul contract is an additional layer of protection I have, so after some thinking, it's actually better to use Alexis first. If Mila gone rogue, I may find that I have less means of retaliating. Initiating Soul Forge. Combining Alexis with an external biolab. Combining. A bolt of thunder strikes the forge tree, and from it emerges a glowing blue seed. It's as large as a dog, and it floats over to the external biolab that I've chosen, and that blue seed embeds itself in it. Alexis has successfully merged with an external biolab. Alexis is now a laboratory spirit, level 1. Huh. Oh wow. She mumbles, she manifests herself as a glowing blue ghost inside the laboratory. There's so much data, so much data. I'm fine. I'm fine. This is amazing. She seems to be looking at some kind of interface, tapping into my stored records of all the biolab scans I have done in the past, including herself. Even my own records are here. I've never realized what you've been looking at. At this point, I decide to just observe her for a while. This is amazing. The external biolab which she now possesses, and is part of her, is actually a tree with a hollow interior, filled with pods, and various equipments for testing. It has a transportation system, in which a beetle delivers any of its required materials for research. Your visual way of representing the soul and the body-mind connection is incredible. I've read books on the theoretical basis of magic and how the souls interact with the body, but this is mind-blowing. It's amazing how intuitive it is, representing it as a spring and a field which that spring nourishes. All those magical theory books make life difficult by overcomplicating the terminology and using difficult-to-understand words. This is concise. Oh. Okay. She's really dived into the deep end. I honestly didn't think of it as that unique, but I suppose humans with no access to the biolab would find it that way. Alexis, are you okay? Mila asks, sounding a bit concerned. Oh, more than okay. This is amazing. This is exactly what I've been trying to find when I was trying to research magic. You should see this. You know I don't like that kind of stuff. Mila shrugs. Ah yes, but I'm fine. I'm really fine. Mila sighs, I sometimes forget how much of a nerd you can be. Hey. Alexis floats and looks at other stuff. The representation of the demon's presence as a parched fire with a dried field is also fascinating. It seems to imply the demonic energies is antithesis to our own, and opens up so many options on how we can counteract their presence. What's this, a data set on our star mana, and those floating vases pouring out star mana? Holy cow, this is like, mind-blowing too. What else do you have? Alexis is constantly floating about the biolab, looking at more and more interfaces. Mila turns to me. When she reads a great book, she can't stop talking about it. I think she's in that phase again. Mila. Seriously. This information can advance magic research by decades. At this point, I decide to cut in. Alexis, your task is to research the beetles and the countermeasures necessary to conquer the volcano. Don't get sidetracked. Ah yes. But can you give me a week? Let me just have a look at this huge pile of data you have. I'm sure there's some other amazing stuff in here. No. I will not tolerate disobedience on your first day as a biolab spirit. Get to work. She sighs and then she nods. Okay. I'll do it, but give me daily free time, alright? I work 8 hours a day, alright? The remaining hours are mine for rest and my own activities. I really want to look at all these data. 12 hours. And you will be monitored. Ah, fine. I know. And she gained a level. Although her god's blessing is lost when she died, she still retains quite a fair bit of perks, one of which is the experience perks. Beetle Winter Adaptation Stage 2, 4 months remaining. Volcanic Adaptation Stage 2, 6 months remaining. Tree Winter Adaptation Stage 2, 6 months remaining. Beetle Volcanic Battle Form, 3 months remaining, may complete earlier. Beetle Volcanic Defensive Armors, 2 months remaining, may complete earlier. On the new Freaka front, they had an envoy from Nung and Takta. It seems that Nung and Takta now wants to aid New Freaka in their resistance against Sulla, but the person sent by Nung is slimy beyond belief, so Yvonne and the advisors found it hard to agree with them. There are no good guys in this war between the three nations. All of them have their own goals, and all three wants a piece of each other, though Nung and Takta are now allies as a result of their mutual enemies. Under other circumstances, they would probably attack each other. So once again, New Freaka's council cannot decide. They don't really want to turn down their aid, but at the same time, these two nations aren't the most upstanding and honest of nations. Well, one of the key skills a leader needs to have is to decide. Sometimes picking a choice is more important than evaluating which one is right. But Yvonne's style seems to be more concerned on what's right. She has a need to be morally correct, at least from her perspective, and that clouds her ability to sometimes make tough, probably cruel decisions. Ah well. Year 77 Month 1. A new year begins. Still as cold as ever though, not like the wizards gotten to the point of weakening it yet. There is still a fluctuation in the coldness, so I suppose whoever they sent to undo that cursed spell is still tinkering with it. That little moment with Alexis and the whole database of my past research brought up a point about my data access rules. As a tree, I share the information freely with my artificial souls and all the biolabs, so it initially seemed natural for me to do the same. In fact, I did not even think about this data security issue until Alexis did what she did. But I guess it's a bit too late now. Oh well. She's doing all right as a research spirit though. I think I'm near a breakthrough. Alexis mumbles. I think I've figured this whole lab work thing out. All I got to do is press some buttons and the lab itself will just keep trying different combinations of materials to change stuff. She's already level 10 as a lab spirit. It's rather unfair how these hero reincarnators still retain some of their perks, even after death. Alexis floats over few beetles, each in one clear pod with a light green liquid, kind of like how most people imagine large glass preservation cylinders to look like. The lab itself does most of the work, as in, doing changes to the beetles which it experiments on, and then producing the results for Alexis to then interpret. The length of the research essentially is an automated number-crunching exercise, derived from an estimate of X% likelihood of a favorable outcome divided by time taken per test per biolab. In a way, since we're on the security topic, it's really like a machine trying to break a password by trying to key in a combination. Therefore, by adding Alexis, a sentient mind of the mix, Alexis can look at the data and make educated guesses, which narrows down the options the biolab has to crunch to, so we're more likely to make progress on a research topic. So when a biolab is tasked to research volcanic endurance, it'll try different combination of trees and then see what works. As such, my own guess is that providing the correct environment and sufficient resources would actually enhance the research output of the external biolabs. It's a lot more mechanical than I thought it would be. It's really all about looking at all the output and datasets, and just deciding where to go as a next step, and the biolab just does it for you, most of the time. Alexis frowns. Now that she's a spirit confined in the biolab and its immediate surroundings, people can see her, and they see her as a blue apparition which haunts the biolab. What are some of those words? Mila frowns. Mumbo jumbo. Alexis laughs. Really, just talking about research results and choosing what's more likely to work based on the testing results. I know you understand it, don't act dumb. No. Mila sighs. You're just trying to avoid my fate of being made into a research spirit, aren't ya? It isn't so bad, actually. I get to float around and look outside of the tree. Have you noticed how starry it gets at night? Mila didn't answer. The moons are gorgeous at night, and one of them never truly turns dark. And I think the other one's on some kind of 3-month cycle, instead of the 1 month we're so used to. Well, the moons are different after all. Mila, seriously. Take a leap, do something, see the world with me. Again. Don't just hide there in the comfort of TreeTree's soul realm. No. Alexis pauses and she floats up to the top of the biolab tree. She sits on one of the branches and she looks out. Well, the sunrise is going to be gorgeous. There are some things I cannot see, given the limitations of my tree vision. And what I cannot see, those in my soul realm cannot see either. I too wish to see how the sunrise truly looks, instead of an augmented version pieced together by the collective data formed through Trevor and Dimitri's gathered sensors and receptors throughout the valley. Maybe I should actually have eyes. iTree Stage I research option unlocked, 24 months needed. Whoa. I mean, the word itself kinds of scare me, and I try to image myself a tree with eyes. No matter how it still comes out as a little freaky, probably the kind of stuff that belongs in a Lovecraftian epic. Heh. Why don't just give me the iTree, but I suppose certain kinds of abilities now go through research. I mean, I'm a bit confused actually. Does the system actually have a way of saying what I can research, or what I can get through my skills? There's discussions that say leveling grants skills on a random basis. Essentially there's a big pool with skills in it, where skills you are more likely to get have a higher probability, and then you essentially draw. Research is what happens when you fail to draw the skill you want, and as a consolation, you could still work towards the skill. Anyway. Mysteries of the system. For all you know, it's just one person up there deciding what to give me, and what not to, and just rolls a die every now and then for the fun of it. Year 77 month 2. Strangely, I think the wizard succeeded. On the eve of the second month, a strange lack of cold sweeps through the land, and the cold didn't come back. It's probably just a reduction, not a complete removal. Trevor spoke. We can still faintly detect the presence of the spell, just in much lesser amounts. Huh. Probably a reduction in the power of the spell's effects, so the valley being so far away experience a significant improvement. You know, if you have some lab that focuses on magic, you could find out. Alexis butts herself in. It's a biolab with magical sensors that focuses on living things. It's not a magic lab. Okay, but why not make a magic lab? It will help, since there are so many magical unknowns out there. It's not as if I desire for a magic lab, then I will get a magic lab. Research. Alexis taps a few screens in the biolab. Alexis floats onto the middle of the lab and uses a skill, Research Planner. We'll need to first unlock material testing, then materials lab, then into magic attunement, and then into magic sensitive equipment, and then a basic magic lab. Probably about 1.5 years worth of research. But you'll get material lab within 6 months. I'm thinking. What do you say? I think it's a good idea. I'm thinking. After your volcano research. I want to be able to secure the volcano first. Amen, come on. I think magic can help you fix the volcano problem too. No. Biological solutions first. I have horns to help me manage the beetles if I can get those upgrades. Alexis sighs. Okay. She pouts and she goes back into her biolab tree. Somewhat unnervingly, this biolab tree derives its energy from Alexis, not me, and so it gains new equipment and abilities as and when Alexis levels. Alexis is now level 14, and her most recent skill is probability charts, which produces an estimated likelihood of outcomes for a test, before actually going for it. In short, her skill simulates testing a bit. Her biolab tree has a small chamber which functions as her personal room, where there's a bed that actually interacts with her spiritual form, so she can sleep. Actually, the entire biolab tree seems to be able to react to her as if she of a solid, real person, and at the same time, she can switch it off, and then pass through things. Alexis goes back to her room, and decides to take a nap instead. Maybe she's not that happy with my decision. Anyway, now that the snow's stopping, it's a great chance for me to boost my growth. Grow. Expand. I think my tree instincts are driving me a little crazy. Expand. Yeah. So we have more trees. After losing close to 7,000 trees to Alexis, thanks to this month's returning warmth, and my newfound winter resistance, we're back up by 3,500 trees. So yes, more trees. More trees. The trees are also now starting to feed energy and resources back to the tuberous storage. Tuberous storage upgraded. High-density tubers unlocked. Tubers will be naturally upgraded. Oh. Yay. They store 2 units of energy now. Back to expanding and food. And so I decide to try my luck with the damned ginseng tree again. Alexis, can you also keep watch? The ginseng tree's right next to the biolab, with a lot of beetles and web spiders protecting them. She covers her head in a pillow. Didn't hear you. I know she did, and I know she will. Because her soul contract compels her to. Anyway, new freecans are happy. Warmth means a return to regular farming, stockpiling, and less burning through their stockpiles. Yet, it's also bittersweet, because the opportunity for Sulla to now attack them is returning. The winter sort of gives New Freaka a natural terrain deterrent from war. Even in a world of magic, not everything runs on magic, and so terrain still has huge influence on logistics, resources, and even petty things like warm clothing and all. The council decides to reject the Nung and Takta offer, as they've decided to state that they have no claim in this war, and would prefer to stay out of it. It's a way of not pissing Sulla too much, as this gesture would suggest that Newfrika is genuine in not participating in any conflict. If Baruch were to endorse Newfrika's independence, do you think that'll go well? One of Yvonne's counselors speaks to the exiled wizard of Baruch. They seem to be rather close acquaintances, perhaps even friends. Knowing my king, I doubt that'll ever happen. He has never endorsed or supported any allied nations, what more one as far away as Newfrika. He is not a man of many friends, and believes each nation should stand on their own strength. Ah. But I suppose you could convince some of the lords to lend some assistance from their private armies. The fiefdoms themselves act mostly independently of the king, anyway. The counselor nods. Ah. I'll need to get this message to the trading corps. Let's start with a trade. That's a good idea. By the way, I heard about the tree spirit's demands. Yeah. It's kind of extortion, isn't it? I don't see it that way. Strangely enough, I now come to view the tree spirit as the guardian beast of this valley, and supporting it is probably the best insurance you can get against Sulla. Really? You think the tree spirit is willing to step in? From what I hear from Lady Yvonne, the tree spirit is flighty, inconsistent, and acts rather irrationally at times. Such are beings of another plane, their minds are different. True. Can't expect it to think like we do. And I doubt it ever will. Its concerns are different, and my view is, Newfrika best aligns itself to the tree spirit's desires. I think from the fire demon encounter alone, the tree spirit demonstrates far greater destructive power than it usually lets on. Some of the counselors will find that a hard pill to swallow, since we are supposed to be an independent state, not a puppet of a tree spirit. Convince them not to see it that way. Think of the tree spirit as a potentially friendly dragon. It has its own thing going, generally lets you do what you want, and if you make it happy enough, it can sometimes help you. Perhaps get the tree folk chieftains to speak to them. They revere the tree spirit after all, as their deity or some kind. It'll just sound like preaching. The other counselors will hate it. Maybe you should speak to them. You know well enough that they look at me with the same eyes of suspicion. I am an exiled wizard from another country. What weight does my words carry? The counselor sighs. There must be another way. Maybe you don't actually need to give the tree spirit actual jewels, you know. Ha! It's a tree spirit, right? Perhaps all it wants is a nearby location that contains those jewels, even if it's hidden or buried under mountains of dirt and rock. Or maybe it doesn't even need it in the processed, polished form we are so familiar with. I highly doubt it wants it for the same reason as our nobles and royalties do. Maybe it just wants raw jewels. So be it if it's mixed with rocks and whatnot. The counselor rubs her chin. That's actually a good point, and worth clarifying with the tree spirit. We've gotten so used to nobles' expectations to have jewels in a certain condition, that I didn't think that a tree may not need it in a similar state. Certainly, raw unprocessed gems are worth far less than processed ones, which need special equipment and skilled gem craftsmen. Yes. Tell Lady Yvonne, we would require more information. If we can glean an understanding of the tree spirit's intent, we can act accordingly. Year 77, Month 3. This room is awesome. Lozan jumps. Apparently she leveled up. Indeed. Jura nods, holding a set of wooden weapons. The passives to your training reminds me of the effects of a skilled military drill master. Such rooms would be useful in any preparation for war. Lozan blocks the wooden sword. She's gradually getting better at all the combat skills that Jura is passing on to her, and Jura's complaints has been getting less. It seems the term, late bloomer, is real, or perhaps it's just the influence of a dream tutor, constantly feeding the combat skills to her. They practice for about 2 hours. All right, enough for now. How are you feeling? Sore. Lozan talks about her muscles aching from all the blocking. Jura's pulling his punches. After all, Lozan's only just turned 8, so her physique isn't comparable to Jura, who had years and years of training, and has a body of an adult. Lozan's at least 10 years away before her body could stand up to Jura at full strength. Jura passes her an ointment, made of preserved healing fruits. Loffin's experiments in preserving the healing fruits granted her some basic ointment-making skills, as it seems the juice from the healing fruits mix with the vinegar to form some kind of basic pain-relieving liquid. It's not a potion, though. Lozan sits on one of the chairs in the training room, and applies the ointment to her sore joints. I expected to find you here. Loffin walks through the door. Hi, Mom. Just finished practice. I spoke to some of the merchants in town, and found out there's a proper teacher for Elvish writing. Do you want to? Lozan nods. Oh, really? Good. Can he come here? This training room has training boosts, maybe I learn better here. I'll ask the teacher about it. Anyway, come, we need to go work on the olives, now that we're finally getting some fresh batches. Amen, Lozan pouts. Jura pushes her along, making hand motions, chasing her away. Next stop, Volcania. Okay, I came up with that name, but the volcano area is a mouthful, so I decided on Volcania. Volcano research is complete, so I task Alexis to research more volcano-related countermeasures. Beetle Winter Adaptation Stage 2, 1 months remaining. Volcanic Adaptation Stage 2, 3 months remaining. Tree Winter Adaptation Stage 2, 3 months remaining. Beetle Volcanic Battle Form complete. Beetle Volcanic Defensive Armors complete. Beetle Anti-Magma Weaponry, 3 months remaining. Beetle Basic Magical Lances, 6 months remaining. With the completed research, the beetles near Volcania gained a special armor, and their head changed significantly, such that it's enveloped in the new special armor. With these changes, 3 beetles could take on 1 magma monster. So, with the improved status, the beetles attempt to head further, closer to the volcano, and find a bit more information about the inner volcano. Failed. Too many magma monsters. Undeterred, I create more subsidiary trees, all designed as beetle nests. Each beetle nest houses 5 beetles, and with an additional 30 subsidiary trees, I send the larger beetle army into the volcano. And still failed because there's just way too many of those magma monsters inside. Fine. If it's a game of numbers, I am a tree spirit with the ability to spawn multiple subsidiary trees. So I spawn another 70 subsidiary trees. Subsidiary tree limit increased to 1,500. Hell yeah. Power to the tree swarm. I'm an invasive species of trees about to take over this volcano. Horns, you take command of the beetles and do some recon, alright. Got it, boss. The next few days, Horns mounts several expeditions into the inner volcano area, only to encounter stiff resistance from large swarms of magma monsters. It seems the inner volcano area is crawling with giant magma monsters, large enough to be buildings on their own. Magma golems. If not for their rather lack of horns, they would actually look somewhat demonic. We can't get past the magma golems, they are far too powerful. I see. It seems the upgrades are still insufficient to take on the larger monsters. So I will have to wait for more upgrades. If Alexis could do some research. I am already doing them. Ah yes. It'll take time, even with my skills. Well, she's not lying, and I foresee materials to be my next bottleneck, as higher-tier research requires exotic materials, which will be harder to get. An expansionary approach is necessary, at least to secure additional materials that I will need. My current root extraction, mineral refining, essence harvesters, reactivated now that I no longer have to be in winter mode, are producing iron, copper, and a few other commonly found materials, and for essences, the common ones. The Nightmare and Soul Harvesters brought me 2 experience seeds, so I have a total of 3 now. It seems this is an incredible rarity, a gift that even kings desire. A fruit that guaranteed a level. That's worth a ton, and I think it is something I should use to make a trade someday, for something of equally great value. I wonder whether I can detect the Demon King's coming. Alexis muses, tinkering with the lab. You sure you don't want magic labs? And sensors? You still hung up about it? Yes. There's so many things I want to know. Can we reliably predict the Demon King's arrival? Is there a magical fluctuation in the world that we can pin on? What are the kinds of magic that create the demon rifts? Don't you ask yourself those questions? I do, but my priority is the volcano. Why? Because it is a volcano. I want to expand there, I want to gain the volcano's powers. My instinct tells me a volcano, as a natural force of nature, is similar to a ley line. Okay, that makes sense. Alexis pauses and then floats onto some branches. Her biolab grew over the month. It added another branch which houses more pods, smaller ones, which is used to run smaller experiments, which then helps to speed up the entire research process. I mean, that's what I think. My gut feel is there are natural energies in the ley line, magic of the world, and perhaps I need to find ways to tap it. Gain new research. Perhaps its raw form is not so easily accessed as a ley line, but it is a kind of native ley line. So I want it, happy. Help. Huh. Alexis pauses, and I think she buys my explanation. So you want some kind of permanent establishment on the volcano, which allows you to tap on its strength like some geothermal power plant. Yes. Well, yeah. At least I now understand your obsession with the volcano. And I see why it takes priority over magic sensors. Good. I am a tree spirit and gaining more powers for my soul forge is logical. I could even say it's something that drives me. Research planning. I checked. It's not clear yet, I can't see a clear path to it, but it seems having magma-tolerant roots, tremor resistance, and natural energy harvesters seem like the few basic precursors to collecting energy from volcanoes. What else you need, it's still unclear. That's a good start, we can start work on that after we are able to reliably expand and hold a position on the volcano. We are in this for the long haul. Still, you're not worried a demon king pops up and ruin your project? I think he's about 5 or 6 years away. The first of the rifts should open within the next few years. I am betting on the chance that he spawns on some other continent. Demon kings don't always appear in the same place. Then, the heroes will come along and save the day. As they always do. I hope. Alexis sighs. I guess you have a point. Even heroes just gears in this system. That just keeps churning. So much for heroes. I think heroes are a stopgap measure to solve the Demon King problem. Well, that's how I see it. Maybe the gods hoped some heroes become so powerful that they could beat multiple generations of Demon Kings, but so far, that has not happened. The best is a generation of heroes surviving 3 Demon Kings, according to Yvonne's knowledge of history. Has it always been this way? Ask the gods. I mean, that's really the way, right? They don't say shit. The reincarnation gods know nothing about the history of this world. All they know is the gods of this world ask for reincarnators, their job is to give it to them. What's in it for the gods? What's their stake in keeping the world this way? Can't gods just snap a finger and make things back? My personal guess is they can't. Perhaps their abilities of intervention are limited. So they resort to heroes. I have no idea. Year 77 month 4. I am level 129 a few months ago. When am I getting the next one? So I decide to go to the volcano and a root strike on a lot of magma monsters. And it proves to be less effective than I thought it would be. I mean, they still destroy the magma monsters in a single hit, but near a golem, it still took like easily 15 shots of the root strike to kill it. And that's way too much. I wonder whether it's because my super effectiveness against demons, so I previously did not feel my root strikes were that weak, Or is it these magma golems have special defenses against root strikes? Might just be a passive that goes, reduce damage from nature or tree-based sources by 50%. Or perhaps it's some pierce damage reduction. Or perhaps I am really so weak. You know, rather than constantly theorize what exactly is the problem, you could just consider to use inspect. Mila suggested. That's what Alexis would do. I pause. I feel like an idiot. Tree. I mean, it's seriously basic, no. Use inspect on monsters. I even have the inspect skill. Have I been a tree for too long that I forgot such basic monster hunting basics? Did I lose common sense somewhere along the way? Year 77 month 4 continued. Inspect. Damn it. The magma golems have pierce resistance, nature element reduction, and physical damage reduction. So all those skills together mean my root strike is less effective as it would be on any other monster. Less effective but still 15 root strikes. Okay, actually any other monster of a similar tier would have skills and passives that provide a similar level of resistance. It's how higher tier monsters, just like how higher level people, are exponentially stronger because the cumulative effects of stacking different abilities. So any other monster of such tier would be as difficult in their own ways. So, research more weapons of course. May I suggest killing the golems anyway? Horns butts in. You know, because they killed so many beetles, I would like to see them die. Ah. I would like to have vengeance, master. When did he learn the concept of vengeance anyway? You know what, yes. Let's go hunt golem. I need the damn level. And off I went. I spent the next few days attacking every golem I see with root strikes, and then crawl up to another golem to continue. It's kinda like how a Zerg base uses creep colonies to get close to the enemy, and then attacks them with then sunken colonies. And I did that many, many times. Spawn subsidiary tree near golems, unleash a rain of root strikes, kill golems, repeat. And I see horns crying in joy. Seriously. I think he gets enjoyment from having a bigger badass kick the butt of the badass that kicked his butt. Actually, I have no idea whether that is a cry or a shout because it just sounds really insecty. Anyway, kill golems. And after maybe about 50 golems, I level up. You gained a level. You are now level 130. Upgrade initiated. The entire valley shakes as a thunderstorm suddenly appears out of nowhere. Lightning hits each and every subsidiary tree, and each and every branch on my main tree. Is this like the starting sequence of some superhero transformation? A hole opens in the sky, and from that darkness, massive black lightning strikes my main tree. What is happening? The elves seem afraid, as that massive black lightning continues to strike my main tree. I suggest all of you leave for a while. Indeed, they all ran as fast as they could to the town of Newfrika, and well, it seems they too can see what's happening from their distance, because there seems to be a massive hole in the sky. Any idea what's going on? I ask the rest of the souls and the wisp. Not a clue. Alexis shakes her head. But she looks rather amazed by it. And how are you still talking when that black thing is striking you like that? Ah. Good point. Am I supposed to feel pain or heat, or? I don't know, anything. Lightning after lightning strikes down on the trees, but yet they don't do any damage. It's as if they are just making a connection. Is this the fate of trees in the storm? Are you evolving or something? Alexis asks. Yeah. I think. Amen. Level 100. Secret. I think some things should be a secret, no. The lightning continues and then, all of them stop. The hole in the sky widen a bit further to reveal something that looks like a rift, a small fissure in space. And a black lightning emerges, larger than any other, and it zaps my main body. Void energy collection completed. Oh. Now I feel pain. It feels like every single part of my body is cracking, like a snake trying to change its skin, or a sea creature replacing its shell. The branches, barks, trunks start to swell, and the leaves all drop from my main tree, leaving me looking like a bare but bloated-looking tree, all the bark expanding to reveal cracks and seams, like stretch marks. Upgrading. And then those cracks expand, as a new layer of skin emerges from underneath, a glossy dark-colored bark. This cracking, expanding, and then the older layer falling off happened throughout my main body, and it took about 2 hours. The hole in the sky is gone, but the ground is still constantly rumbling as my body expands. I believe the same is also happening to my roots, and that causes the ground to constantly shake for those 2 hours. And then I'm done. You have now transformed into the Star Soul Tree. Star Soul Tree. Able to tap and access to the wisdom of the past, from exposure to ancient bones and fossils, gains access to a special type of leaf able to collect starlight and produce star mana in small quantities, maximum amount of leaves capped, also gains access to a star mana storing organ and special star mana abilities, stats improved, various collection, various skills upgraded, soul management and access rights and restrictions unlocked. Ah yay. Star mana. As I read that update, coming across that word, I just had to pause and take a moment to realize what just happened. Star mana, the supercharged fuel of the heroes. And I can make them. In small quantities, perhaps incomparable to that of the heroes, like that massive amounts that Alexis used to have, a gift she now lost since she died. An odd thing, of course, since I thought heroes can resurrect with the right spells, but as it turns out, it's only a gift that unlocks under certain conditions, and it expires when the Demon King dies. Anyway, star mana. I can make them. I can make them. What does this mean? Have I taken a small step towards being a hero? One chosen by the gods to do battle with the Demon King? I can't wrap my head around that. I am a tree, and if a Demon King, if Alexis's description of its power level is true, I am still very far away. Just because I have star mana does not make me a chosen hero. So no. I don't think so. And somehow, a part of me rejects the idea of fighting the Demon King, so that is also not the path I want to go. It goes against my natural strengths as a tree. I am a tree. And a tree is a nurturing, protective force. So how do I use star mana? Do the other great spirit trees have star mana too? I think so, maybe with star mana they manage great escape feats like an entire vanishing forests. Star mana. A great power. And a secret. Year 77, month 5. A small branch grows above me, at the very top. A few leaves of them, almost black in color, the star leaves. They are even shaped like stars. A secret experiment in star mana gathering, and I'm excited to see what I can find at the end of that path. Then, I move my attention to the research happening through the biolabs throughout the valley. Well, beetle winter adaptation is complete, but it's not cold anymore. Maybe I should direct my attention to volcano research as well, together with Alexis. Right now, with Alexis, Trevor and TreeTree, we can do about 6 research topics concurrently. Indeed, volcano is the biggest priority at the moment. The resistance the volcano's inner area is indeed much higher than expected, so we do need stronger, or at least, more specialized beetles to counter the stronger magma golems. Giant beetles. Thanks, horns. Golems are big. If beetles are big, beetles can win. That's a good idea, sire. Our small size is a weakness, a large beetle may be a good solution. Trevor, you're agreeing with that idea. Giant beetles. I do believe Horns is right to suggest that, and he has the combat experience to support that sort of view. How giant are we talking about? As big as the golems. Are there some biological rules in this world on the size of insects? I mean, there should be a limit, right? Though I kinda felt stupid, even my current war beetles are the size of rhinos. So actually, I think there's probably no rules on that. Probably if we had the right materials and components, a massive beetle would be possible. Alexis, any input? Sure. Once again she uses her research planner, and I think I see her smirking at the corner of her face. A short moment later, she nods and she comes over to join the conversation. Presently, there are no obvious paths to beetles the size of golems. Giant beetles, maybe half the size of the golems. Horns sound a little sad. Ah, I wasn't finished. But beetles about half the size of golems is possible. We would need to research enhanced exoskeletons and enhanced interior structures, and then we would be then able to research a large beetle pod, and then a large beetle. Large beetle. Not giant but bigger than what it is now. So large is a good word. Horns nods furiously. Seems like everyone's keen on the idea. I still think magic is better. Giant beetle. Yes, sire. Giant beetle is a good path. I believe massive war beetles can do a great deal of damage on the battlefield. Very well then. Let's go with it. Beetle Winter Adaptation Stage 2, Complete Volcanic Adaptation Stage 2, 1 months remaining. Tree Winter Adaptation Stage 2, 1 months remaining. Beetle, Anti-Magma Weaponry, 1 months remaining. Beetle, Basic Magical Lances, 4 months remaining. Tree Stage I Research Option Unlocked, 22 months remaining. Enhanced Exoskeletons, 4 months remaining. Enhanced Interior Structures, not started. Large Beetle Pods, not started. Well, I already have 6 concurrent research topics, but next month I can add enhanced interior structures to it once the volcanic adaptation and anti-magma weaponry complete. Anyway, with that, I then return my attention to the elves and the new freakas. The evolution I underwent last month, that one day of a great black lightning storm fade from memory of the elves, after all, to them, it's just one of those scary days, and to them, I do not appear any different than I did before. That's because of a camouflage. My true appearance is unseen by anyone, except the artificial souls and Alexis. A sense of gradual normalcy is returning, now that the effect of the blood blizzard is slowly fading from the air itself. Crops massively growing throughout the farmlands, and the valley's trees are surging in number, surpassing the number of trees destroyed. For New Freaka, it is war preparation time, as Sulla issued a formal war declaration, and they consider New Freaka as an enemy nation. As a result, all direct trade routes between Sulla and New Freaka is cut, legally. And then posturing, nasty letters threatening, demanding the surrender of Sulla. Which are all ignored. Although that is the collective decision of the senior leaders, the counselors, leaders of the standing army, and the higher-ranked mages, it still is stressful, highly worrying for them. The town is now fully gearing up for war, their magic builders working overtime, building massive walls and other defensive positions. Guards on full alert, and all visitors of New Freaka thoroughly screened, as there are also fears of assassinations. Jura, it's not a good time. Jura stands in the middle of the council room, Yvonne, and the rest of the counselors around the table. The tree spirit wants an update on the demanded jewels, which was agreed earlier. We are in a state of war, Jura. A counselor stands. And the tree spirit is your best chance of defending New Freaka successfully. Jura glares back at the counselor. And what exactly would a tree spirit bring to the table if Sulla invades with a large army? The counselor responds. Some trees. Potatoes. Hot water. Yvonne almost intervenes, but another counselor next to her stops her. Fact it, the tree spirit has been making demands, and where we believe it is a mutually beneficial trade, if the circumstances allow it, we will support those demands. The councilwoman next to Yvonne leans in and whispers. The tree spirit needs to know where we stand. It's about time we make it clear our position to its representative. Yvonne sighs. But these are tough times. Resources, whatever we have, is all focused on our existential threat, the Sulla Kingdom, who recently threatened to wipe us off the map. We need all our resources into more men, more weapons. Not the whims of a tree spirit who claims ownership over the entire valley. Jura listens and then laughs. And he laughed like a maniac. I think Jura laughed for a good 3 minutes before all of the counselors, all of them staring at him like he is some kind of a madman. When he stops, he looks at Yvonne. Ah, Yvonne, are the counselors aware of the extent of the tree spirit's powers? She paused before responding. I did tell them. What did you tell them? Perhaps your knowledge too is incomplete. A tree spirit has the powers of an archdruid, many very powerful healing powers, some ability to repair soul damage, abilities to absorb fire, abilities to control beetles, abilities to create hot water, spawn various trees, and use root attacks, ability to boost growth rates and spawn different types of trees. Jura nods, not bad, but let me ask you. How many beetles does the tree spirit control? 300. Maybe 400. Yvonne answers. Any other guesses? 700. A counselor decides to humor, and says as a joke. As more recently advised, the actual number is about 3,000. Lead by Beetle Knight. The counselors all stare at each other. Tell me, if 3,000 beetles go to war, how many men would Sulla need to field? One of the army leaders, a captain, sitting in the council room does some mental math. 12,000, perhaps 15,000. Do you all believe for a moment that Newfrika can protect itself from the tree spirit's wrath? Should those 3,000 beetles turn against you? The counselors look at each other. Would 3,000 beetles be an existential threat, I wonder? One of the counselors stand, are you threatening us? No. I believe from the tree spirit's point of view, you all are threatening him by challenging his dominion over the valley. So counselor, you better retract such words, and pray the tree spirit does not hear it directly. The counselor pales and sits. Yvonne, I believe you recall the agreement when the tree spirit consented to your new settlement in Newfrika. One of the older counselors stands that our presence is at the tree spirit's grace and mercy, and we are to acknowledge the tree spirit as the rightful master of the valley. We are not to encroach on the forests more than the tree spirit allows. It is but a phrase, no. Another counselor, a younger one from the refugees, stands, such phrases exists in the founding documents of many nations. A formality to acknowledge a benefactor. Not when the phrase refers to that of a tree spirit, an actual magical being who resides and controls the valley. A silence in the room as everyone stares at each other. Back to the jewels. I have been authorized by the tree spirits to let the council and everyone else in the room know the jewels are meant to fulfill the evolutionary requirements of the beetle champions and various other beasts that live in the depths of the valley's forests. Obtaining them will further enhance the combat abilities of the beetles. If we get it, can the tree spirit lend us his aid? With those 3,000 beetles? Yes. He is prepared to summon the 3,000 beetles, deploy whatever other beasts he can gather from the valley to do battle, and various other abilities at his disposal. But only in a defensive battle against Sulla or any other attackers and not an offensive attack. That's simply because it's easier to control beetles when they are nearby, as TreeTree and Trevor can both assist in coordinating the beetles' movements. We need some time to discuss this. You've been given a week to talk it out, but the tree spirit expects a positive response. Acknowledged. Jura walks back to the valley with an air, a kind of smugness around him. I think he is rather pleased how that went. Also, Jura understated the number. I told him 3,000, but actually, with my most recent evolution to a star soul tree, the maximum subsidiary trees, I have increased to a mind-boggling 4,000. So, with 5 beetles per subsidiary tree, the actual maximum beetles I can deploy, in a 100% beetle allocation would be 20,000. But of course, I am not going to have them all beetle trees, since I do need essence harvesters, material processors, crop producers, biolabs, homes from the elves, surveillance trees, and so forth, so the actual number of free trees is about 2,500, so that still represents a massive army of 12,500 beetles. There are already about 2,000 beetles full-time defending the volcanic area from the magma monsters, another 2,000 in the south forest around TreeTree and the ley line, and another 2,000 hidden throughout the valley and its forest, the actual deployable beetle forces. 6,500. And I like to have some unused subsidiary tree capacity to spawn additional subsidiary trees and when I need to, as an emergency response to any possible changes, or to reinforce new areas when necessary, so that would mean setting aside about 400 trees. So 4,500 beetles is the actual end number. 900 subsidiary trees. How did the discussions go? I believe it will be positive, TreeTree. Glad to hear that. Bamboo is asking for an upgrade. I am aware, but it needs those jewels. Ah. Yes. I guess I have personal interest in wanting those jewels too. Jura laughs. I think he is rather happy. Back at the meeting room. Do you think he is lying? I think not. 3,000 beetles. That's a massive number. Indeed, my initial projections factored in 400 beetles in any defensive fight against Sulla. 2 army advisors turned to take the stand, captains, both of them. How does this change the battle? A councilman asks. A war beetle, as Jura refers to them, is actually equal to 2 elite soldiers. Sulla would have to deploy specialized forces to deal with the war beetles, as their thick armor and massive horns make them difficult to kill using regular weapons. It's possible to swarm one of the war beetles and then attack its weakness, their joints and the gaps between their armor, if they are scattered throughout the battlefield, but at 3,000, there is a very low chance of catching any of those beetles alone. Captain, I understand none of the technicalities of combat. What I want to know is, what does that mean in a war for us, and would the price of the jewels be worth it? I believe, if the numbers are true, it is our number 1 chance of beating Sulla multiple times. 3,000 war beetles essentially means Sulla must field at least 30,000 men, just to even hope to have a good chance of winning against the war beetles alone. You said 12,000 to 15,000 in the earlier meeting with Jura, and 2 elite soldiers in your earlier sentence. I fudged the numbers with Jura to understate the value of the war beetles. Then the 2 elites. Sulla's conventional army composition comprises of 1 elite for every 10 regulars. 30,000 men is then reflecting 3,000 elite soldiers and 27,000 regular. It's what I would need to deploy if I am asked to defeat war beetles of that number. And mages. At least 100 mages. Yvonne pause, remember our first battle here against Sulla. The one lead by Wazuius Mofford, the purple blade. Ah, why? The beetle's back then hides underground or in the trees. They then spring up behind enemy lines. The captain's nods. If so, that makes their defensive value even higher, and I believe there isn't much to discuss. I strongly request the council fulfill the demands and get assurances from Jura and the tree spirit that those 3,000 beetles will assist us. I would pay 10 times the demanded amount to get the defensive services of 3,000 war beetles. The councillor look at each other before they eventually nod. The Wizard of Baruch nudges the lady next to him. As I predicted, the tree spirit is truly the guardian beast of the valley. The councilwoman turns and shakes her head. Certainly, even I underestimated the number. You're right, I should have brought it up earlier. The wizard smiles smugly. Glad to be proven right. The councilwoman shrugs, ugh. Year 77 Month 6. Tree Volcanic Adaptation Stage 2, Complete Tree, Winter Adaptation Stage 2, Complete Beetle, Anti-Magma Weaponry, Complete. Beetle, Basic Magical Lances, 3 months remaining I-Tree Stage I Research Option Unlocked, 21 months remaining Enhanced Exoskeletons, 3 months remaining Enhanced Interior Structures, 4 months remaining Large Beetle Pods, 6 months remaining Beetle, Anti-Magma Armors Stage 2 to 12 months remaining. It's time for more Volcano Smash. With the volcanic adaptation and anti-magma weaponry, the odds of beetle versus magma monster is now 3 to 2. So with the 2,000 beetles in the area, I attempt another round of volcano invasion. And yes, I'm a little bit closer. With upgraded weaponry, we can easily take on the regular magma monsters and claim additional territory, since less beetles is needed to successfully defend one area, but I still can't hold the areas with the massive magma golems, so I have to avoid those areas, but that's about it. I'm a step closer, and the trees in the volcanic area are black, reddish in hue, reflecting their adapted trunks and roots, which are highly heat-resistant, and able to extract their resources from the dried magma that forms the earth around the volcano. Progress, but now consistently holding position against the magma golems will be the next hurdle for an actual volcano base, and then to move on to finding ways to extract the energies from the lava beneath it. A part of me realizes that's probably the point. I do need a magic lab of some kind, since extracting magic from lava is probably out of the scope of the biolab. Oh well. Alexis will be happy then. And the first batch of the jewels from New Freaka arrives. And a request for a demonstration of my 3000 beetles. I guess seeing is believing. Spazer. Clarifications on labs. I spent quite a bit of time thinking about the labs, and about what they can or cannot research. So for biolabs, their research essentially is only on physical attributes, physical properties, and biological adaptations of plants and living things, i.e., how strong their skin is, their size, shape, what they are made of, what sort of operating environment they're most suited in, the range of that operating environment, i.e. tolerance, the size of their horns, or roots, or leaves, etc. What the biolab can't provide are skills and active abilities. Year 77, Month 7. I got to level 20 yesterday. Jura pauses and looks at Lausanne. Loffin's next to him, and the little girl then says, I got a passive ability, it's called Blessed by a Soul Tree. The two adults glance at each other. In a way, they are now like her father and mother, and there's a mix of pride, worry, and confusion when Lausanne says she hit level 20. Most children never level so fast, at most around level 5 to 10 at age 8, and it is most likely due to the presence of my continuing involvement, the constant essence-infused dream tutors, power leveling, and most recently the upgraded training tree. Well, what does it do? It doesn't say much, it just says I'll get certain blessings. TreeTree, any idea? Well, the first thing that is clear when she gained that ability, now I can see her much more obviously than everyone else. It's as if she glows in my vision, she's got a constant tooltip hovering on her, that just screams, look at me. Well, rather than conjecture, would you mind going into the biolab and we can all find out? Yeah. Good idea. As Lausanne walks to the biolab inside the secret hideout, Loffen and Jura both look at each other. She's growing very quickly. Jura said with a sigh. I fear for her. Me too. But I feel I should be proud. It is what Ricola would have wanted for his daughter, to be strong. Jura pauses and then he nods. I suppose so. Ricola would want his daughter to be competent, even though he himself wasn't much. Loffen ribs Jura. Hey. I mean, his talents were in being a village chieftain. Combat was never his strong point. I suppose it's TreeTree's influence then. Well, I have been giving Lausanne every single combat-related essence I generated through Dream Tutor, so, it did, over a long period of time, give the necessary improvements in her understanding of combat tactics. Lausanne walks into the pod and the vines wrap around her body, she goes in, and I take a look. May I? Alexis asks, and I shake my head. Sorry, let me have a look at it first. Alexis sulks. Okay. And well, frankly Lausanne's body is normal. She is a regular elf after all, though I could see right next to her usual soul spring, there's a small flower. Blessed by a soul tree. Due to long-term exposure to soul tree's abilities, the body is naturally accepting of its influence. Grants additional compatibility with various soul tree abilities, spells, and skills, and so they last longer, and has stronger effects. Oh. Sounds okay. At this point I think this isn't much and I can't see anything else being different, so I let Alexis in on the view. She too looks at Lausanne's young body. Her soul spring is normal, and the water coming out of it is clear and smooth, her body is well, normal, the shores covered in a thin layer of grass nourished by the mana from her soul spring. It looks like there is still some ways to go. It's generally normal. I say, the skill isn't much. I think it's not a bad skill. How so? I think her growth rate will be even faster, since it means your training room, dream tutor, and power leveling will be more effective on her. Oh. That's a good point. You have plans for her, don't you? What do you mean? I mean, you have been investing a lot of your essences into her, more than any other elf. It feels like you want her to be something. Or are you preparing her for something? Ha! Well, frankly, I didn't know why either. Somehow I got sucked into the narrative that Lausanne wanted to be a hero, that I just went along with it. But thinking about it, I think it's worth trying. Maybe a hero will be too hard. To stand at our level she would need access to a lot of star mana, gain the various divine blessings and unlock a cheat ability. Well, yeah, that's way too high a wall. It's like trying to climb Mount K2 after a successful hike up a gentle hill. I am not a fool to send Lausanne up such unreasonable walls. But I think creating a champion is a good idea. Reach the level of the demon champions, I think that's a realistic target. Perhaps she can get there when she's 30? I think she needs to learn magic next, a magic lab will do so. Ah, Alexis trying to sell the magic lab idea again. To be fair, I do appreciate the need for one, once we make progress with the volcano. But I'll keep that to myself for now. You want to be her tutor? I don't mind. I think I'll gain different skills, compared to all these research-linked abilities I have now. It will help that I regain my magical abilities somewhat. And I feel a little threatened by the idea of giving Alexis magic again. She did, though it is not her, burn down slightly less than half of the valley. Oh. Volcano occupation is at a stalemate. I will attempt again, once we unlock the large beetles, twice the size of rhinos, hopefully then the odds are better. At present, it takes about 200 beetles to kill one single magma golem, and I only have 2,000 in that area. 200. And there are a lot more than 10 golems. I am hoping the odds change to about 10, or so large beetles versus one golem, then the chances of a successful occupation of the volcano increases. Also, back to New Freaka. They asked for a demonstration in exchange for the jewels. And well, let's just say they have never seen 3,000 beetles march out of the forest before. Year 77, month 8. Sulla is coming. With a force of 50,000 men. Ha! That is quick. Jura mused, but to be honest, I think I know why that happened, and it ID also why I held my cards back. I suspect there is a mole within Yvonne's council. Or maybe close to them, there is a Sulla informant. I don't know who exactly, but among the 25 of the senior leaders, all of them are talking about the beetles. Apparently none of them could keep their mouth shut after seeing 3,000 beetles, and somehow this news got to Sulla, who obviously feel highly threatened by 3,000 beetles. Maybe they now saw me as a threat they needed to crush, and crush me before I got even stronger. Well, it could be there is just some kind of surveillance magic happening. Alexis though posits a different theory. As far as I can tell there are no scrying countermeasures or spell barriers in New Freaka, except the forest itself which gets some scrying protection your massive camouflage and mist ability. Jura on the other hand thinks that, I think they just wanted to fight New Freaka, and this is a convenient time, since they are still in the stalemate with Nung and Takta. I doubt they know about the beetles. The traders and merchants I speak to seem to say Sulla has been itching for a fight for some time, since the blood blizzard is significantly weakened. They just won't find Aeonion to suffer for the punishment and misery of the blood blizzard. 50,000 men. What are our odds? I think we can win. Jura shrugged. But it will be a hard fight. And it also depends on who is the general. Well, during this time Trevor pings me personally. He is my surveillance officer anyway. I see the enemy army in the outermost tree rings. I don't think they are suspicious, as they left the outer trees untouched. Also they have siege weapons, master. Are you sure no suspicions? Or are they just playing the part? Any mages? Yes, sire. I counted a mage corps of at least 1,000. There are multiple individuals exhibiting a rather strong presence as well. Okay, bring me there. Certainly. With that, my vision zooms to the incoming army. Thanks to my wider coverage of subsidiary trees, I have trees really far away now, and Trevor even went through the process of decorating each tree such that they look like natural growths in the area. And indeed, a large army is marching, comprising mostly foot soldiers of about 40,000, some cavalry, about 2,000, and the rest being a mix of the mages, healers, siege weapon operators, and their elite forces. New Frika has spotted us. One commander rides up to the man that looks like the chief of this army, thanks to his elaborate armor and uniform, and a long flowing magical cape. Good. It seems we can go with our initial plans for now. Bombard the town with our siege machines, mages, and force them out of the town, into the open where we can slaughter them. Another man rides up to the general, and the general just smiles. Heh. I have the countermeasure for that. We spotted the beetles that Wazuius fought during the last battle. How many? 500 perhaps. They are really well hidden within the trees, and only our rangers can spot them with any accuracy. I recall Wazuius suspects the presence of an elvish archdruid. You agree with that assessment, General? Ah, the chief is a general. Lord Rossel's earlier expedition claims the presence of a living forest. His wizard says there is a presence that stretches the entire valley. I never heard of that. The men around the general seem surprised. It's something Lord Rossel shared only with our senior leaders, and it is why we have been treating Sulla with such caution. And why there are 1,000 mages. A realization appears on all the senior leaders around the general. Perhaps they suspected 50,000 is overkill. Yes, now that the battle is near, it is time I tell you the actual strategy of this army. The king and the high council suspects the presence of a magical beast, something like a great earth tiger, or a king grand beetle, that Yvonne has somehow managed to convince into an alliance. It is likely to be a defensive pact, else Yvonne would be more offensive in her dealings with us. The recently observed magical phenomena in New Frika from our spies support this. A firestorm, then countless black lightning, all points to magical beasts, of a very high tier, that likely to have experienced a high-level evolution recently. A gulp. Now, we're going to try to talk to it. First. It is then a ranger appears, he looks really old. This is Master Ranger Fockley. He's very good with magical beasts, he has the ability to commune with magical beasts, locate magical creatures, beast talk no jutsu, and charm magical beasts. He'll sneak into the forest first, and find the magical beast. Our invasion of New Frika is only after he gives us the signal, if he can convince the magical beasts to withhold or ignore their defensive pact. Else, one of the alternatives is that we will have to bomb the shit out of the forest as well, then fight the beast. But we will weigh our chances when that happens. Siege weapons against magical beasts. A captain asks. Not ideal, but if we have to fight it, we best weaken it first. High-tier magical beasts are powerful, but siege weapons and magic will still hurt. Now that we are near, what do you think, Master Fockley? Confident that you will succeed? I think our chances are good. There are magical creatures, I sense a few in the forests, my senses tell me of a fairy of some kind or a forest sprite. Charming fairies will be a huge challenge, but I think I can succeed in convincing it to break the pact. Ooh. Ranger. Interesting. How will we know? Fockley will fire a flare. Green flare for go, red flare for bomb, blue flare for run. Run? If the magical beast is a lot more powerful than we currently suspect, we better retreat than attempt an invasion. No point wasting our lives, right? What if there's no flare? Then we wait. We wait for a week if we have to. Communion with magical beasts is going to take time, and we will give Master Fockley the time to talk. But after 10 days and Master Fockley is alive, we will expect a flare. If Master Fockley is dead, we will run. But that's unlikely, right? Master Fockley grins. His face is really wrinkly. Run? One of the younger captain asks. Of course. We must know exactly what we are facing. I will take calculated risks, but magical beasts are a category of monsters that is best dealt with by powerful adventurers. The rest of the men nod. The general is a highly conservative man. Fockley made his way towards the valley, under the cover of various stealthing abilities, such as a hidden amongst trees, and other such effects, which makes him close to invisible to other men trying to spot him, except the tree itself. So yeah, I see him sprinting, alone, into the valley. Despite his age, he is still clearly a high-level ranger and has the stats and abilities to back it up. And as he got closer, I noticed he would stop every now and then to use some of his abilities. Strange, the reading is confused. He touches the trees, some of which are subsidiary trees. As he makes his way into the valley, he comes across a few beetles. The beetles, though they spot him and attempt to attack him, he has a skill, where when he just lightly touches them, they fall into a kind of sleep. I think that's a kind of disabling ability he has. He has an ability to make us docile. Horns is shouting in my mind. We must kill him. Kill him. He is a threat. Threat. On the other hand, I'm very curious about this Fockley, and I want to see exactly what he's got. Horns, go hibernate. Beetles, retreat as well. With that, the beetles quickly hide and stay out of his way, which the ranger noticed. Huh. The beetles are gone. It's watching me, A king beetle with some kind of domain abilities. Or a fairy with glade watch. He says loudly. I think he wants us to know. He walks closer, his senses are sharp, and as he follows, it leads him right up to the main tree. Huh. He looks around, wondering what he is seeing. The beast is asleep. And he then turns his eyes on Alexis's biolab. He glances up and down, and then he uses an ability, identify. A forest spirit of the academic kind. His face pales somewhat. Something's not right. Eye of the ranger. He looks around and looks puzzled. Then he looks at my main tree. It's not a magical beast. He withdraws his arrows. Now, this is a lot more complicated. At that moment, I too use inspect on him, and it gets repelled. It seems he has some kind of skill protection. He lifts his bow and arrow and aims it at the sky. It's going to be a flare. I wonder whether he is going to bomb the forest, but then again, I have countermeasures, so I wait and see. I won't fire that yet if I were you. Jura steps out of the main tree, ready for combat. Oh. The ranger looks like he is about to shoot, but then decides not to. So, who are you, and why are you here? The ranger pauses. May we settle this over a cup of tea instead? Oh, tea. A set of 4 chairs and table magically appear before the ranger, and he sits down. Then he starts to brew a pot of tea. Yes, tea. Clearly the proper way to speak to magical beasts is invite them to tea, no. Magical beasts. Jura's turn to be confused, but somehow, he sits down on the chair. Worry not, elf. The tea is laced with a fragrance that magical beasts will enjoy, but does nothing to us. I mean you no harm, so here, I'll drink it. You can use identify and to detect poison too, I won't feel offended. He swaps teacups with Jura, and takes a sip. Jura laughs, so, Ranger. What magical beasts are you speaking of? The forest spirit there, and the beetle lord hiding somewhere in that tree. The ranger points. And these trees right around me. He then points to the root brain complex, and then my main tree. He then pauses and he shouts. I know you are watching. You can join me for tea if you want. They're good stuff, made with the tender young tea leaves collected from the Safar Mountains. He's dangerous, sire. We should kill him. Horns shout in my mind. We should. I agree. But I have my curiosity piqued, so I will humor him, and watch what happens. I feel a bit of a headache. Alexis complains. I think he used some kind of skill on me. Sucks when I lose some of my magic resistance. Hey, you retained your overpowered ability to level, that counts, right? Anyway, we focus back on the little tea party between Jura and the old ranger. Jura actually decides to take a drink. So, old man, what do you want? I work for Sulla. And I am here to help with General Akbar's destruction of New Afrika. Jura, strangely, didn't react to the news. I think his diplomat levels has been rising, and such news just doesn't faze him anymore. Oh. Why? Well, Sulla and New Afrika is at war. I am a servant of the king, a soldier of Sulla, so I am here to help Sulla win. I see. And so how does that lead you to this little forest? Well, can you not interfere if we attack New Afrika? Unfortunately, no. We have an agreement with them, and they are under our protection. Why? Perhaps there is something we, Sulla, can offer you. Jura grins. Well, do you know the tale of the original village of Afrika? I still remember the day, almost 7 years ago. Has Sulla transgressed Afrika in some way? Well, yes. Sulla's army burnt this village, killed a whole lot of elves living here, and if I remember correctly, the soldiers skewered the bodies of the dead onto this tree behind me. Those who survived fled far and wide. He pauses. I see, that's how it is. Surely it is time for bygones to be bygones. Jura's face contorts. I still remember the faces of those burnt to death. The screams, the shouts. The loss of the village scarred me, haunted me for years, and it is only with great blessing that I stepped out of that shadow. He sips a bit of the tea. So I believe I am not wrong to say my grudge, rightly, runs deep. The old ranger sighs. The acts of a vast nation like Sulla cannot all be attributed to the nation. There are many actors in any country, and not all are aligned in terms of our values and principles. You're an old man, I'm sure you have seen many battles, and know very well, such statements does nothing to my grudge. A grudge, anger, and hatred is not something a talk can relieve. And now you, and that large army of yours are here to destroy New Afrika. Does that not sound like Sulla intends to repeat of that incident? The old man pauses and nods. Well, you are right. But in war there are no good sides, only victory matters. It is as you say, only victory matters. This is not the first time Sulla has tried this, and we won the previous 2 battles. Do you think you can win this one? The old ranger nods. Indeed, that is why 50,000 warriors are here. Well, you've made your intentions clear, so you may leave now. The old ranger grins. Well, I am deep within enemy territory, do you think I will leave without taking out all of you? Root strike. That's the moment a few root strikes surge from the ground. He dodges and shoots a few explosive arrows, but a few wood shields block them. I follow up with a few more, as Jura, transforming into his bamboo armor form, gives chase. Trevor releases a poison field that covers the entire forest, and frankly, there's no chance of him running. Unlike the assassin from before, I know exactly where he is, because his hidden by trees ability don't protect him from a tree. He runs and simultaneously fire numerous magical arrows at Jura. General. This is Fauclay. Please arrange bombing of the forest. Bomb the forest. I repeat, bomb the forest now, I am engaging with the inhabitants. He runs into some spider webs. Damn it. It seems the spider's hidden presence, natural ability, is a bit harder for him to detect. He cuts through the webs, but it slows him down enough for a root strike to hit him, which is parried by a small buckler shield. I suppose it's magical since it actually manages to absorb the impact. Roots. He ducks from the arrows Jura shoots at him, but that gap allows Jura to catch up. So why not stand and fight? I reckon we are about the same level, but given my skill mix, I will lose. The old ranger shrugs, so no. He smashes a potion of some kind on the floor, and it releases a bright light, and then a thick smoke. A flashbang, essentially, and it stuns Jura briefly. A few arrows hit Jura's wood armor, and the old ranger resumes fleeing. "General, where are the bombs?" he messages. "No. You do not have to worry about me. I'll find a way out." And so the siege machines and the mages get in position, and they start to hurl rocks and spells at the forest. They started the bombardment. Yvonne looks from the new walls they built, but as they brace for it, they notice the curvature of the projectiles drive the boulders and fireballs toward the forest. The forest. Right before the projectiles are about to make impact with the forests, my subsidiary trees, of the 100 or so designated as a shield generators, kick into action. Massive wood shields surround the trees, so the boulders and ordinary fireballs just collide against the shields and leave some scratches and burns on the shields. I mean, compared the demon fire-powered fireballs of Alexis, these fireballs and boulders are really basic, so some damage is taken, but well within our limits. The army tries again, and the second, third volley of attacks similarly left only some damage on the shields. "What do you mean the bombardment is not working?" the ranger shouts through his message as he flees. He seems to be getting caught in more spiderwebs as his concentration strays, but he is much faster than Jura, so Jura struggles to catch up. The old ranger is halfway out of the forest now, and frankly, I don't plan to let him live. So the moment he slows down, as a bit of spiderweb catches him, I would unleash a few root strikes at him. And it would be blocked by that small buckler, or some other leg guards that he has, or the magical chainmail he has under his shirt. Nothing fatal, but it's wearing him down. Each of my root strikes are filled with paralysis and poison, and the entire forest is releasing a kind of poison, a mix of Trevor's abilities and my poison field. It's nothing lethal, especially over such short periods, but every little bit of the poison and paralysis is slowing the ranger down. And he takes in some antidotes, which rejuvenates him momentarily. Another volley from the siege and mages. No effect, thanks to shield generators. "General, it's not working. Strong wooden barriers are blocking our attacks around the forests, and those shields can take hell of a beating." A slight panic in the camp, as a group of beetles, about 300, emerge behind, attacking the siege machines and mages. They manage to destroy a few siege machines, but it is a trained army, some soldiers are already on site to protect them, and so they quickly reorganize. The mages redirect their attacks on the beetles instead. Each beetle, with their thick armor and the recent volcanic adaptation, which grants tiny amounts of fire resistance, can endure one fireball, so the mages need 2 shots to kill them. Additional fighters rush to protect the mages and siege machines, and the numbers are sufficient to overwhelm the 300 beetles. However, it is enough, as that delayed and distracted those ranged attacks, and gives Trevor and me some breathing room to regenerate some of the weaker shield generators. There are some variation in the enemy, siege machines operated by higher levels men, and some stronger mages, who accordingly deal more damage. Back to the old ranger, Fauclay, I send more spiders after him, and he demonstrates his competence as a forest ranger, cutting through the spiders as if they were nothing. But he is increasingly exhausted, and he realizes it, knows what the plan is. Every time he slows down, a root strike would appear somewhere, and I know I am gradually wearing him down. Going somewhere so soon, old man? Jura finally catches up again. "Tell me those root strikes from you." No. Jura attempts to slash his head off. He ducks. That's a shame. He somehow dodges and puts some distance between himself and Jura, and throws some small knives. It hits the wooden barriers around Jura, and then explodes. They're not going to stop, are they? It knocks Jura back a little. I really hate explosive attacks. Keep getting them. He jumps and tries to close the gap with the old ranger, but the old man is still too fast. And no, you'd be a fool to assume those root strikes will run out. He shoots a few arrows, but Jura gave me the opening I needed. 2 root strikes fly towards him as he tries to aim midair. He manages to react in time, but the root strikes breaks his shield buckler and armlets. Oh dear. The old man flinches from the impact of the root strikes, and he smashes into a tree. Before he manages to recover from the impact, I quickly activate constrict. Vines emerge from tree he's on and entangles his legs, and then injects a poison through his skin. Oh no. He then realizes he is done for, as the vines quickly wrap around his entire body. Jura lands right in front of him. Well, looks like the bombardment stopped. I think they are busy now. Kill me. The old man said as a soldier, this day will come eventually. Oh? That's not for me to decide. He stares at Jura. You deny me this right? Oh come on. Your country burnt my village and you want to play honorable. Please, did you somehow think I am in charge? Then who is? Jura thinks for a while. I almost answered you there, but that is a secret. A root appears, with the strongest paralysis and sleep poisons I have, and stabs him right above his heart, through the damaged chainmail. With that, the poison spread quickly, and he loses consciousness within a few seconds. The mages and soldiers, after a long 2-hour battle, defeat the group of 300 beetles but with quite a few casualties. General Akbar, Fockley lost consciousness. An adjutant reviews the magical artifact linked to Fockley's arm. What? The general is deep in thought. Should we resume bombing? Another of the general's assistants ask. My gut feels tell me it is no point. You saw those shields, they take just a little damage from regular attacks and ordinary fireballs. We'll just wear ourselves down doing the same thing. Get the mages to group together for a grand fireball, and fling some oil barrels into the forest. Well, that's no good. So before that happens, I activate my attack. Multiple tunnels appear throughout their camp. It's a function of my root tunnel ability, and from them, thousands of beetles stream out, horns blazing, charging into the soldiers. From above they appear like a horde of ants that just got triggered, and a black tide sweeps out of those holes. Then, root field, poison field, and then root surge. The field of roots slow down the soldiers, the field of poison weakens them, and the sudden surge of a wide area skewering of sharp roots from beneath the ground kills hundreds of unprepared regular soldiers, while harming some of the elites. General, we are under attack. By a massive beetle force. How many? Maybe 3,000. It's throughout our position, and I have not gotten a good count. Even our lookouts are under attack, and they've not responded. Before he finished the sentence, a root strike emerges from underneath the camp that pierces the man through the chest, splashing some of his blood onto the general's face. The general is armored with enchanted gear, and probably has numerous abilities to protect himself, so I decide to first pick off the rest of his men. It's probably too much effort to kill the general now. He draws his sword and lifts it up, and it glows with lightning. And he then pierces the ground with it, and I feel some electrical zaps. It stings a little, maybe like a small numbness. But no matter, I have plenty more to go. Another adjutant runs over. General, the siege machines are under heavy attack from the roots emerging from the ground, and almost all of them has been destroyed. Together with Trevor and Dimitri, we unleash multiple root strikes on various positions of the enemy army, picking on the mid-tier elite forces, who are stronger than regular soldiers, but has limited defensive abilities against multiple root strikes. Retreat and stay away from trees. The general shouts, with some kind of skill, carries his message to his entire army. General, our elites are falling. Another root strikes pierce this assistant's legs, but fail to deliver a lethal blow. I know the enemy's targeting those stronger than the beetles. This is a trap, and the longer we stay the more we are going to lose. He shouts and activates some kind of skill. The skill spreads out to the entire army. All the soldiers, those lightly wounded and even the heavily wounded, experience a sudden rejuvenation in their energy. Their bleeding stops temporarily although the wound remains, and their steps turn into large, quick strides, unhindered by the rooting field or the poison field. They retreat. Our kills, mine, and those of the beetles combined, is probably about 3,000 to 4,000, though many, many more are injured. The beetles got most of the kills, and also suffered the most casualties, as I focused on the mid-tier forces, and I think I got about 400 or so kills. Frankly, if the battle went on, it'll probably result in heavy casualties on both sides. The beetles are less effective than I expected, and that's due to the general's passive buffs for his entire army. They flee for as long as the general's ability lasted, and that brought them quite far from New Freaka. And for now, the battle is over. I think the general will return with more firepower, but that is a worry for another day. 2 levels gained. You are now level 132. You gained a new skill, Serpentine Root Strike. Poison Field and Rooting Field upgraded. Shield Generators upgraded. Oh! Best part of any battle. Spazer. Layers. Description. Additional notes. Soul Core. The true immortal entity that gets reincarnated and lives life. Artificial souls do not have this core. Core Shell. Inner Soul. Memories and very few skills are stored here, and depending on the condition of the soul, this means some PPL get reincarnated with them. Most inner souls do not survive the reincarnation process, so in the case of heroes, special protective measures by the gods are necessary. Soul contracts are at this level. Memories of spells and rituals are here. Inner soul and outer soul barrier. Represented by the soul shell. Outer soul. Where experience levels gained are stored. Produces life force and mana. Some rare skills are stored here. Titles are stored here as well. Also contains a blueprint of the soul spring. Demonic soul contracts exist at this level. Heavenly blessings also exist here. Level caps also exhaust at this level due to restrictions in the size of the outer soul of artificial souls. Soul inner body barrier. Represented by the soul spring. Takes life force and mana, and releases it into the inner body. May have certain filters or amplifiers which alter life force and mana released into the inner body. Most learned abilities exist here, as something, either a brick, a runic alphabet etc., on the soul spring. Destroying the soul spring is like sealing one's abilities, as it means the body's production of mana and life force slows to a trickle, and the skills learned are disabled. Inner body, mental and spiritual realm. A personal space. This is the mana pool and the life force pool. It's usually a mix of both, and the size of this grows together with levels, AMD, also the experience gain. Some passives, curses, abilities exist in this space. Gods may create special wellsprings that grant extra mana. Certain personal tragedies and burdens, nightmares will also manifest here. Familiars, summons, eidolons make a connection at this level to borrow, or share the mana and life force with the host. Inner body and physical body barrier, represented by the shore. Absorption challenges manifest on the shore. It may suggest why certain organs are more adept than others, as it takes in more life force naturally. Certain skills, such as disabling abilities, exist in this level. Such as disable hands, or chakra sealing abilities here. Mana drain from enemies creates leaks at this level. Physical body, represented by the land which borders the shore. The part which actually interacts with the outside world. Experience, foods and what the person experiences in life is then absorbed here, and it is then carried by the inner body to then be absorbed by the outer soul. Physical damage taken here. Skin, physical body, external. External environment. Year 77, month 8. Few days after the battle. First things first, loot. Since the beetles did most of the fighting, New Freaka had no right to any of the loot and remains, so, the beetles collected all of the remaining armor, weapons and stuff, which is stored in my treeossery. I'll trade them for something someday, though, there seem to be some magical items in there. Next is my prisoner. Frankly, I didn't think he's going to talk, and actually, I personally didn't really feel like interrogating him, which I feel is a waste of time. After all, Sulla is an enemy and we're playing defense. The things he can tell me, my prediction is, will be quite worthless. So, I didn't waste time interrogating Fockley, as my interest in him was more academic in nature. After stripping him of his remaining magical items and storing them in my treeossery, I turned to my main objective. Drugged with all kinds of paralysis and sleep, I put him inside a biolab where I can investigate him, and eventually, I will suck him dry with my vines and feelers. I like to see how a high-level person looked under the hood, just to compare. I have seen the heroes, Jura, Yvonne, and now I have this ranger, and I wasted no time to have a look under the hood. And there are some notable differences, mainly in where the mana and life force is strongest. The eyes, nose and ears are more pronounced than others, probably due to his need to be sensitive to his surroundings, and his soul spring, with all the stones around it, combined to create a nice fountain. Taking a good look at the fountain, there's a kind of wooden frame around the fountain, in between the stones, and as I reach out to touch the stones, little tooltips come up telling me what skills he has. And I try to yank the wood and stones that has this. I mean, it's just something I always wanted to try, but did not do with people whom I consider my allies. I had always wondered what could happen if I took one of those rocks out. So I yank it. And it doesn't move. Ah well. I keep trying, but instead it just hurts the ranger. It seems it's magically tied and intertwined with the soul via some kind of force. So I stop and rest of a while. Maybe I just need more power. And after drawing a bit more mana and energy from the trees around me, I try to yank a rock on the fountain again. It shakes and I could tell that sense a huge amount of pain, but he remains unconscious and strapped in. Thank goodness of paralysis. The rock shakes but then something pulls it back again. It's as if I'm trying to pull a piece of metal away from a very powerful magnet. I could a bit but then the magnet pulls it back once my strength lets up. Not working. Borrowing the root brains for some processing power, I calculate that the amount of energy I need to break that magnetic pull of the soul spring seems really high, so I decide it's probably not going to work no matter how many times I try. Maybe this is like the atomic bond of souls, that's why I need shit amount of energy to break it. It's only if you're trying to break things. Fixing things is a lot easier, since those same forces work with you. The wisp, whispering his wisdom. Thanks, dude. Well, I let the ranger sleep a day inside the biolab, and then I resume testing the next day. There's been quite a few other things I wanted to test, and it so happens I have a high-level person whose body is suitable for it. Once again I enter the person's inner realm, and this time, I flooded the body with my mana. It's been something I'm curious about since I did it with the Hellhounds, and then with Alexis's body when she's contained within me. What if I did it with a living, normal person, what happens then? His body vibrates intensely, struggling in the biolab, as my mana, like a green tide, washes into the inner realm. Specimen's compatibility with injected mana is low. Specimen body is resisting. Prolonged exposure may result in mana poisoning. Did this happen before? Anyway, I keep it up, I still want to see what happens. The body flails inside the pod, kinda like a fish struggling to escape from an octopus. Specimen body is experiencing mana poisoning. Okay, let's see what happens when I heal him. Mana poisoning reduces magic and ability effectiveness. Really? I try injecting his body with the healing liquids from my healing fruit, and also the paralysis poison. A conundrum, I suppose, but the healing just repairs damage, but does not cure the status ailment. Mana poison is still in effect. Specimen body's organs are starting to suffer damage. Heal. But I notice the healing is slower. 2 full days passed as I constantly drown the ranger's body with my mana. He's not dead yet, because one of the vines continue to supply his body with nutrients and air to stay alive, so I can continue to observe what's happening. I'm actually curious, does the body actually gain compatibility over time? Or does the body continue to naturally reject my mana? Specimen body's organs are failing. Heal. Healing effectiveness is significantly reduced due to high levels of mana poisoning in the physical body. Specimen's body is dying. I couldn't stop it. The decay in the body is surprisingly quick, as the mana poisoning somehow makes the body turn on itself. It's as if the body is rejecting itself, and strangely, I kept watching. A part of me was like, this is a rare opportunity to witness death under a microscope, and where I paid attention to most, was the soul spring. I see the land surrounding the river and lake that forms the person's mana start to break apart, as if a great earthquake is shattering them into small pieces, then the water in that river and lake start to leak out into the nothingness, and it reveals a crumbling riverbed of some kind, filled with unusual marks. I couldn't see much as the crumbling went on rather quickly. I wonder, is it because he is dying too quickly? But I didn't wonder long, because I had to focus. I want to see what happens to the soul spring then. As the crumbling riverbed closes in on the soul spring, the spring starts to dry up, the height of the spring falling and eventually stopped. Then, the rocks and the structure surrounding the soul spring start to break up too. This is something I waited for, so I reached out to it, and tried to grab hold of the rocks. As I touched them, they vanish and poof-ed into dust. All of the rocks did. And all that's left is a bare, empty hole floating in the nothingness. As all the land and riverbed has crumbled away, the background changed into that of a bare emptiness. In a way, it's like a black hole sitting solitary in space. Perhaps at that empty hole, there was once a star, a soul here once. The soul has gone. The wisp whispers to my imaginary ears again. I see. You've managed to salvage some of the decaying skills. Due to the decay of death, the salvaged skills are of a lower quality than the original skills possessed. You've received the following, which can be used to create seed-infused skill fruits. Class Seed, Ranger, X3. Class Seed, Beast Tamer, X2. Skill Seed, Archery, X2. Passive Seed, Spark of Brilliance, X1. Omen. All these skill fruits are useless to me. But I guess I'll find use for them somewhere. Maybe Lozon. You've witnessed death as it happens in the inner realm. Familiar contracts upgraded, skill salvaging chance increase. Biolab upgraded, post-mortem equipments, death sensors, death delaying equipment and body preservation added. Hey! That's something good. Finally. The physical body of the ranger stops flailing, like a puppet with their strings cut off. Lifeless, the body is pale, greenish from the damage of the mana poisoning over the past few days of experimentation. I later arranged for the corpse to be burnt. Meanwhile, the victory over the Sulla army had made a lot of new freakin' devotees. A few days after the victory, they held some kind of feast in the courtyard of the Tree of Prayer, where the leaders of the new Freaka thanked their lucky stars and the protection of the valley spirit for their victory. It has free food, drinks, dances and performance, some kind of prayer and worship led by the tree folk, things like that. I mean, well, I feel somewhat flattered that the citizens think that way, but the words of the leaders do feel quite hollow. Despite all the praise of their guardian and the so-called will of the valley, they somehow manage to worm in a word or two on their supposed contributions. Perhaps it's a thing with politicians, even in this world. Year 77, Month 9. Tree Spirit. Yvonne speaks. It is rare for her to come alone to the main tree's courtyard, but the fact that she did, means, probably there are changes in the way things are organized in the new Freaka Council. She presents jewels and other items I had previously requested, stored in some kind of a magical bag. As you requested. What is it that you want? Jura sneers. For Lady Yvonne herself to deliver the jewels, surely there is more to just delivery. The freeloader. Horns shout in my mind. Only to me, of course. Even I know that. She sighs and nods. It is as you say, Jura. After the victory over the Sulla force, we have been receiving letters, messages, and envoys. She then shows a few of such letters and passes them to Jura. Some of the smaller nations nearby are greatly impressed by our successful defense and would like to form some ties. Freeloader. And now they take credit for the beetle's sacrifice. Horns shout. He's not too happy that beetles were the one who suffered the most casualties, as it will take a month or two to regenerate their numbers. Jura somehow seems to be synchronized with Horns, and he sneers, such opportunistic behavior. Only after such a grand display of power that you get offers. Yvonne nods, that's how anyone would see it, but look from their perspective. They wouldn't dare anger a country the size of Sulla, so naturally, they would avoid any association with us. But that changes when that 50,000 army retreated. Now we are like a new power in the region, a force able to stand up to Sulla, and so, these smaller nations now view us more positively. Us? Us? They had no casualties in combat. Put your men in combat, then you can say us. Horns is rather grumpy, I think. He's not too fond of the New Freakans, mainly because he feels some of the dead beetles did not have to die if New Freaka lent some help. I mean, I personally think the beetles are just a self-replenishing mob, but Horns clearly cares for his hive. Jura sneers again, also somehow synchronized. I don't appreciate the we and us being thrown around. New Freaka did absolutely nothing. We only assisted once we found out they were first targeting the valley. Well, Jura's hiding some details about our own checkered history with Sulla there, but hey, he's the guy with the diplomat job. Yvonne gives out a long sigh. Indeed. And that is why I'm here. We are in an awkward position, as New Freaka is clearly relying on TreeTree's ability for defenses to hold Sulla off, and yet to the outside world, our neighboring nations and Sulla don't know that. They are under the impression that New Freaka is the one controlling all the forces. Master. They are freeloaders. Horns, I think you need to stop shouting. I get it. Then clarify. Tell them New Freaka did nothing, and it is the valley's protector who did. Jura retorts. You do not want to overstate your military prowess and face the consequences later. Yvonne sighs, I wish it was so simple. But the people of New Freaka too wants to believe that the tree spirit is on our side. Yvonne, you of all people, should know that TreeTree cares very little of New Freaka. It's a transactional arrangement, one out of favor. It is about time you let the people of New Freaka know as well. I can't. I can't snuff out their hopes like that. The tree spirit is their newfound pride, their source of stability in this world. If I tell them that, I am afraid a riot may break out. Then crush it. Permission to let them run riot. Then we may have beetles running riot too. Horns interjects in my mind. Even the counselors want to believe it, and they want to believe that TreeTree will protect them. It seems it is my mistake, for being vague and unclear about the real relationship of New Freaka and TreeTree. So, can TreeTree officially be our guardian and protector? Shameless. Horns commentates, freeloaders and these beggars want to demand our master's protection. Oh shush now. I'll think about it. What do I get in exchange? I spoke into both their minds and Yvonne pauses. Our loyalty. Rejected. I care not for that, and you have no way of ensuring loyalty. I demand servitude. I have need of minions to carry out my demands. Make Jura and the elves royalty of New Freaka. Jura and Lawfen will be my two spokespersons, they will play the role of as the new joint rulers of New Freaka, and the rest of you as advisors. From henceforth, the one who rules will be Jura and Lawfen. All citizens of New Freaka is so acknowledge their position as your new joint monarchs. They will be the voice of my will, my elven avatars. Jura seems surprised by that, TreeTree, that. I think he didn't expect that, but seriously, I have been wanting to give Jura direct ruling powers for some time. The arguments and issues we had with New Freaka over the past few years, especially the last few months, really solidified that view, that Jura deserves a seat at the council, such that my demands are heard and known, my needs are respected and complied by these people. Unlike the tree folk, who seem perfectly content living in their small villages, or the centaurs who are similarly happy to have their hillside slopes, these New Freakans have been creating the most problems. Yvonne herself too seems shocked, and her mouth just gasps, a little too dumbfounded to respond, and she takes a few deep breaths while just staring at Jura and my main tree before she finally manages to respond. We are founded to be a council, a collective rulership, such that everyone has a say. 2. To return to a monarchy would be against our founding principles. The council and the people will not accept it. Then be gone. New Frika stands alone. I respond, not like I really needed them. It's really more of a mutual coexistence, since they have the ability to partake in trade to acquire materials that are not available locally. Please wait, tree spirit. Let me have some time to discuss this with the wider council. Such a crucial decision, I alone cannot make this decision. I will summon a meeting immediately. Jura too seems to be taken aback. TreeTree, we may need to discuss this later. And then I turn to Yvonne. Go, gather your council. And so Yvonne runs back, leaving the jewels behind. Horns, we got the jewels already, let's break your first level cap. TreeTree, wait. About that proposal earlier to make us king, are you serious? Yes. Well, not really, but if New Frika agrees to it, I don't mind at all. Please reconsider. Jura shakes his head. It is a position I'm not willing to bear, a weight I cannot carry. I must have my position heard and respected on New Frika. Let's see what they are willing to give. Jura gulps. Surely there is room to compromise with them, something that does not involve usurping the entire ruling council. Even I think that sounds a bit too much, although they've been absolutely deadweights in the past 2 battles with Sulla. Well, I am willing to compromise, but let's see how sincere they are in their counterproposal. Meanwhile, Yvonne quickly gathers her council for an urgent meeting. The tree spirit wants to make Jura and Lawfen monarchs. Kings. Yvonne gulps and nods. No absolute monarchs and kings. Quite unanimous, the decision from the councillors, none of them want to have a king over their head, and New Frika models itself after the Elvish republics. Then we lose our protection. We're all on the walls when the battle happened. You've seen the fury and damage the tree spirit can bring. I still can't help but think this sounds a lot like a criminal gang's extortion. One of them says, the tree spirit has no reason to help us, so quash that thought. Yvonne glares at the rest of them. But at the same time, I too disagree with having a king over our new nation. It is not something our people wanted, and I believe most of them are happy with the way things are. New Frika organizes itself into multiple districts, and each district elects 3 councilmen to the High Council. So in a way, there is a fair bit of representation by the people, which does help in making the locals feel somewhat connected to their rulers. It's a partly democratic structure, though the title of councilman does often seem to pass from father to son, due to the family's influence, even in such a young state. Then. So what are we willing to give? Yvonne. Give? Look, if we are to negotiate this with the tree spirit, we better be prepared to offer some meaningful concessions or give some rights away. Without the tree spirit's protection, New Frika's chances of survival is rather slim. The tree spirit's annoyance at us was very clear in that previous meeting. I frankly do not want to have that annoyance turn into outright hostility. I hope everyone now understands why this meeting is so urgent. All the councillors glance uncomfortably at each other. Unfortunately, I agree with Lady Yvonne's assessment, and so. King is totally out of the picture, the people like the leaders the way it is now. Even if the tree spirit turns against us, I think none of our people will agree to having a king. If we tell them this is to secure the tree spirit's protection. No. I know our chances are slim without the tree spirit, but we are a sovereign nation. If we agree to have someone else rule over our heads, that's against what we have fought for all this while. Oh, cut the political bullshit. We didn't fight a bit. One councillor says. All the fighting so far has been done by the tree spirit's minions. I meant the fighting figuratively, as in our struggle so far. Anyway, are you on our side or the tree spirit's side? You really want a king to rule over us? That's not what I meant. We must know what exactly we are dealing with here, and to do so, we must recognize we are very vulnerable. The other councillor rebukes. It's a messy argument, with a lot of side conversations. So, can we have some consensus? I believe it's clear we will refuse having a king. But are we willing to give Jura and Lofen a seat, and accordingly, authority? Yvonne tries to steer the conversation back to the topic. These councilmen tend to go off tangents sometimes. There is an awkward look among everyone as they shrug. It took one of the more daring councillors to finally say, yes, then all the others started agreeing. Fine, now that we agree to give them a seat, what will be their authority? Remember, it must be something concrete, with actual powers, else the tree spirit will not agree. Then what are we willing to give? Administrator of the valley. Forest master. The tree spirit won't accept that. It's no fool. It's already master of the valley, and does not need us to grant it that sort of authority. It must come from something only we can give. Our men. Our money. Ability to directly intervene in our affairs. Fine, let's go about giving Jura and Lofen combined voting rights over the military, diplomatic affairs. They also get a share of our tax collection as tribute, and smaller voting rights on domestic trade and policing. The councillors went about debating the finer points of the proposed rights and powers of Jura and Lofen, as politicians are often inclined to do. Okay, so, those are their rights and powers, but how do we give it to them without making the rest of the population feel that this is something arbitrary and without basis? As it is, some districts are already uneasy over their representation, and are demanding for more councilmen. One of the rare centaur councillors then speak up. I believe the tree folk worship the tree spirit, do they not? The councillors turn, mostly out of surprise. If so, we can follow how some elven kingdoms have special positions for the senior members of the church. Are you suggesting elevating the tree spirit to a god? In principle, yes. From the powers we have seen, he might as well be a local deity. So a spokesperson of a local deity surely can be given a formal position in the ruling council, with special rights reflecting the local deity's influence in the area. There is precedent. The dwarven nation of Prummash far north gives the great forge serpents chosen a special position in their advisors' council. What matters is then how we convey this decision to the people. If the tree spirit accepts it. If it doesn't, we'll have to figure it out. And with that, Yvonne's meeting is over and Yvonne returns to meet us, this time with 6 other councillors. So, have you agreed? My voice speaks into their mind. The 7 exchange glances before Yvonne takes a gulp and she steps forth. Tree spirit, we are truly humbled that you've assisted us during the defense of New Frika, and our words cannot describe the gratitude we have for sparing us from the bloodshed of battle. The freeloader has finally learnt gratitude, eh? Horn seemed to be happy. Spare me the flowery words. I take you've decided not to accept my proposal. I've been in enough meetings to know that what starts flowery often ends in a refusal. They pause. I wonder how I sound in their minds sometime. We have a counterproposal. Something that would be more aligned to our own founding ideals. We would propose to create a special religious role for both Jura and Lofen, whereby the tree spirit is elevated to that of a local deity. Jura pauses, he seems to be thinking. In this way, Jura and Lofen gains a position as the voice of the tree spirit, which will have similar rights and authority to that of a religious leader. As the voice, they will have significant authority in areas of the military, diplomacy, and external trade. We also commit that our military will be split into a few divisions, with 1/3 of it will be under the command and rule of the voice, and to enforce the demands of the tree spirit, within the framework of authority that the voice has. 1/3 of New Frika's forces. They will be given a special name of your choosing, such to differentiate them for the regular military. There's a silence, perhaps for a few seconds, before Yvonne continues. And, we will formally now set up a new institution under the voice, and we will contribute a sizable portion of our tax collection to this institution, which will also fund the force. And tax revenues too. 1/3 of all tax revenues and collections. I speak into their minds and they freeze. The 7 counselors exchange glances, and then they nod. Yes. A third. Anything else? At this point, New Freaka is willing to offer a third of their military and their tax money to me, so I'm actually quite satisfied with the offer. Yvonne shakes her head. That's all we could give. Well, in terms of land, I do control the valley, and that's been my right since day one. New Freaka only controls the unforested areas further south, the large farmlands, and the town itself. Never mind. An awkward silence. Perhaps they are waiting. Even Jura, he looks a bit worried. I agree to it in exchange for my participation in New Freaka's defense. My thoughts behind this is fairly simple. I do intend to somehow rule over New Freaka eventually, but at the same time, I do realize that putting Jura as king over New Freaka is extremely sudden, and most likely, the New Freakans themselves, the 50,000 non-humans, are going to resist it, and I would have a rebellion on hand. Not that crushing it won't be an issue, but that would delay my ability to gain the necessary resources to further upgrade the rest of my artificial souls and research. So this sort of transitory arrangement helps, and I think it will give Jura and Lawfen the necessary experience needed. Let them learn about managing a town, before ultimately usurping the entire New Freaka. It'll be easier to boil the frogs of New Freaka gradually, so let them get used to having Jura as a member of their ruling class, before, one day, taking over them entirely. Ruling the New Freakans by proxy isn't a bad idea anyway. At least the nitty-gritty of people management is left to the appointed proxy, and the world would look at the town, not at me directly. And really, the tax revenue will help. I can buy more jewels and weird artifacts. I'm really eager to test out that ability I gotten when I evolved to a Starsoul tree. A few days later. Beetle, basic magical lances, complete TreeTree stage I research option unlocked, 18 months remaining enhanced exoskeletons, complete enhanced interior structures, 1 month remaining large beetle pods, 3 months remaining beetle, anti-magma armors stage 2 to 9 months remaining fruit bombs, increased range and power, 3 months remaining tree, volcanic adaptation stage 3 to 18 months remaining. I'll need to start working on the volcano again. The enhanced exoskeletons grants the beetles stronger, faster bodies, but at the expense of consuming some of my harvested metals and some essences, and also longer regeneration time if they die, while the beetle magical lances, even though I completed the research, is not immediately usable as I need to obtain some kind of mines, before they can be infused into the beetles themselves. So I do need a mine, preferably with one that will supply me with non-ordinary resources, such that I can further upgrade the beetles. There is a natural limit on how I can keep upgrading them with ordinary items, without giving them the ability to level via an artificial soul. Also, at the rate of my mineral harvesting from the earth, I have sufficient metals to support only 4,000 beetles with the enhanced exoskeleton. So let's recap. Guys, what are our priorities? I call on my artificial souls for a meeting. Take over the volcano. Kill all the golems. Horns say. He's just had his upgrade as a Baron Beetle, increasing his level cap to 30. The upgrade grants the beetles around him extra strength, armor and speed. Still, it's not sufficient to take on the golems. They are just far too large and tough. And locate additional minerals, resources and ley lines. Trevor's turn. We're actively sending some beetles to scout on the faraway locations. Upgrade. Spiders, fruits, healing. All require upgrades. Thanks for the reminder, Dimitri. We do need anti-air. That reminds me, where the hell did I leave that airship from Sulla? Were you not working on it the last time, then you broke it apart, and then dumped it into your treasury? I think you got stuck when the biolab couldn't look into the materials or decipher the runes. That's Trevor digging through my memories faster than I can remember it myself. Really? Was it that long ago? I try to dig through my own mind. Oh God, it's already 3 years ago. I think I'm also getting more forgetful. Trevor, can you do me a favor and help me track all my outstanding tasks? Certainly. I'll create a task manager in your interface. And a calendar. Will do so. Then mark when the date of the 10-year anniversary from the Demon King's death. I want a countdown timer in my interface. I fear I may forget as I move on to all these lesser missions. Spazer. Oh, I got more Patreons. Thanks so much. To celebrate, this chapter is early, it's not a week yet, and I'm working on a few side stories, and we'll be posting them real soon. Side stories, Alexis and Mila. Sometime around year 77, month 9. Looking at the skies again. Mila's soul pops up in Alexis's mind. It seems there's a kind of shared network that exists for all the souls and artificial souls under TreeTree's care. Perhaps it's the rootnet's ability. I always do. Alexis sits on the branch of her biolab. From the outside it looks like a very large tree, but inside it's filled with all sorts of unusual equipments. I really like the sky. It's orangey today. I can somewhat imagine it. Isn't it nice, not having to run here and there, fighting all the time, just to gain levels? It's not a bad change in pace. But her face is a bit sulky. But it's not enough for you, isn't it? Alexis looks up, there's a small orange cloud floating overhead. Yeah. Why? Alexis shakes her spiritual legs. For those not attuned to magic, she'll appear as a wisp, a faint blob of blue light on top of a branch. For those with the right affinity to spiritual magic, she appears as a young girl, but ethereal, that is bonded and lives in that biolab. She is, in a way, the biolab, and this ethereal body is just a form, a projection from that biolab. I always thought we'd survive. Like heroes in all those stories. A happy ending for all of us. You're the one doing the most research and saying we'd almost likely die. The rest of us were just winging it. I mean, I had the data staring at me, telling me otherwise, but a part of me still, truly, believed in that fantasy, that all things will end well. You're just like all of us after all. Perhaps there's a smile somewhere in there. Yeah. Alexis looks up again, the sun is gradually setting, and there's just a few clouds. One of the moons is already visible, its glow is faint, but as the sky darkens, it'll get clearer and clearer. I thought of what I'd do after the war. After the Demon King. Oh? I'd go on a holiday. A world tour properly, this time. Not our rushed city-to-city killing big monsters kind of tour. Take the time to hike the highest mountains, and see the uncharted lands, explore the world. That sounds like being an adventurer. Alexis pauses and blushes. Yeah. I guess it does. But here I am, stuck here serving the tree spirit as a research assistant. Hey, that's what all of us end up doing, if we're still at home. Working in dead-end jobs. They both laugh. Well, that's a good point. This is a dead-end job, isn't it? One that you have to work for 1,000 years. That's depressing to think about. And look at me, I'm this tree. You should ask for a holiday. Ask for normal employment terms, leave days and sick leave. I highly doubt Soul Contracts has allowances for leave days and sick leaves. Alexis laughs. I think everything can be negotiated. Perhaps some kind of arrangement can be made. Look at Yvonne, she's still out and about even though there's a soul contract in her. That's 'cause she's not dead yet. Mila's probably making an embarrassed face. She doesn't comprehend soul magic all that well. Anyway, I'm stuck here. And TreeTree doesn't trust me. Of course he doesn't. You tried to take over his body. Now that I think of it, he's being generous to give you this dead-end job you're complaining about. It's my survival instincts. Yeah. An awkward silence. We probably should talk about something less touchy. Yeah. What were you thinking of doing after the war, Mila? Me? I didn't think about much, but I thought I'd be a princess. Have high tea in some fancy palace, eat dessert, walk in pretty gardens and stuff. Doesn't that mean you have to marry some prince? I suppose so. I'll have first choice, won't I? I'm a hero after all. And doesn't that mean you have to, sleep with them? Mila pauses. I didn't think of that. I'd pick a handsome one with no body odor then. But yeah, I'd like to be a princess. This is another world, and being a princess like those fairy tales would be something I'd like to do. But it'll be you that's rescuing the prince, because you're the hero, and he's not. He'll be the dude in distress. What's wrong with that? Nothing, but it's strange, I guess. You're kooky, Alexis. You too, Mila. I still really like one of the princess's gowns. It's so pretty. Remember Princess Elena's of the Faroe Isles? I really liked her seashell dress during the reception they threw for us. It really captured the essence of a mermaid. All I remember is her trying to hit on Max so hard. She was really trying to give herself to him. Oh, I remember that. What, were you jealous? Wait. You liked Max? No, I didn't. But I just remembered how ridiculous the princess was. Alexis shakes her head. All the touching and flirting, it's just so horrifying to watch. It's like a train crash in slow motion happening. But she's really pretty. And if Max doesn't have immunity to charms, he'd fall for her. I don't think it's the charms though. Alexis shrugs. Notice how none of us ever eyed any of the good-looking men or women we meet throughout our journey. I think it's the effect of the hero title. Until our quest is done, we won't be sidetracked by such stuff. Oh man. Mila sighs. Did that mean I missed all the good men that could have been in my life too? Maybe. You could have been a princess, if you're not a hero. Oh well. It's not fair. Alexis sulks. We spent years fighting demons, hunting them throughout the world, and we killed the demon king. And what did we get? No special reincarnation from the gods. No post-battle reward to thank us for our sacrifice, those years of constant gruesome fighting. Isn't the gods just using child soldiers in a way? I never thought it like that. I thought it a privilege, a responsibility for those with our gifts. And we are no longer the teens we once were. Just a few years, Mila. But we have a second chance here. We're still in this world. We can still reap the rewards of our sacrifice. Mila's spirit bobs. I don't like the sound of that. No. No. I mean, I don't have to be trapped in this dead-end job forever. The soul contract's on you. Maybe TreeTree can release me from it. Then we can travel the world. We can travel the world if we wait 1,000 years. We could just go and sleep in the soul realm, and wake up 1,000 years later. You can do that, I can't. So these 1,000 years will be a lot longer for me. If I have to keep doing research for the next 1,000 years, I might go mad. Well, talk to TreeTree. A bit of honesty, and maybe you can achieve something big for him. Then he can free you from your contract. I certainly don't plan to serve Dash. Alexis winces in pain. It's an intense one, and sends Alexis into a kind of fidgeting shock. Oh dear. You triggered it. The pain lasted for a good 10 minutes. Mila, a floating soul, could only watch as her friend is in intense pain. Ugman, that was a bad headache. What was I saying? Where was I? What were we talking about? Alexis finally recovers from the pain, and seems to be having some kind of amnesia. Mila pauses, before deciding not to remind Alexis of the discussion. Oh nothing, we were just talking about dresses. Remember Lady Alice's silver bling dress? Spazer. Hey, race a short story since I got more Patreons. Yay. Side stories. Relax and be focused. TreeTree whispers into my mind. A small wolf. That's my real opponent today, and I felt a bit intimidated by idea of fighting a small wolf as my first non-sparring opponent. But it's a monster that appears all the time in the forest, so TreeTree says, it's probably the easiest one around. Still, not easy for me. It's still bigger than me. It growls, baring its fangs. At the back of my mind, I know TreeTree's watching. So is Horns, the giant fighting beetle, and maybe Jura somewhere. So I try to relax, but it's different. There's real anger in the wolf, a real presence of true hostility. Perhaps it's hungry. It growls again, and it changes its posture, and it looks at me with those angry eyes. I look at the spear in my right hand, and the dagger in my left. I practiced for this. I practiced a long time for this, and so, I believe I can do it. I have it engraved in my mind thanks to so many dreams of me just swinging the spear and the dagger. No, I must do it. A hero must do what a hero musts. The wolf charges, our eyes meet. My grip on the spear tightens, and I wait for the moment. It feels instinctive, I'm one with the spear, it's a small one, so I can't use a full-sized spear yet, but it's enough. The wolf enters range. And it pounces. I duck and instantly activate my ability Power Strike. It feels natural, like the times I practiced with Horns and Jura. The spear's tip pierces through the wolf's hide, and it whimpers in pain. Our eyes meet as the wolf tries to take a look at the stab wound, blood splattering out. And I see the pain in the wolf's eyes. This might be the moment it dies. And it whimpers, one of sorrow. Like a dog. A part of me wavered that instant, and my spear's direction shifted slightly. It's enough to change it from a fatal strike into one that will only leave a deep cut. The wolf falls behind me, but because it's not fatal, it manages to get up, and then run away, leaving a trail of blood dripping onto the dirt floor as it flees. And yet, I didn't give chase. I froze. My mind somehow replays that real pain in the wolf's eyes. The whimpering voice, that almost dog-like sound. You're okay. TreeTree whispers. I couldn't do it. A part of me curses myself then. Is this how my dreams of being a hero ends? Am I not meant to be a hero? Heroes kill monsters. The first time you draw blood says a lot. Jura walks over, still holding his bow and arrow, ready if the battle went bad. How do you feel? I'm disappointed. I'm angry. Why couldn't I do it? I look at Jura, and he smiles. His big hands holds me on my shoulders, and gives me a shake. Why are you disappointed? Because heroes are supposed to slay monsters. But I failed. Didn't you tell me that some heroes started fighting monsters when they were 6 or 7? Does that mean I can't be a hero? Jura shakes me again. Are heroes mindless fighting golems? No, I mean, heroes are supposed to be like gods in the battlefield, no. The power of the heavens made flesh, the fury of a hurricane made into human form. So why are you disappointed? Is it really the right thing to feel? The question is this, why did you have to kill the wolf? Because it's a monster. Why do you have to kill monsters? Because monsters hurt people. Did it hurt you? Well, not yet. So why do you have to kill it? Because it could hurt me. Then you'll be killing everyone. It's very likely to hurt me and shows aggression. If I didn't, I would be hurt. Good point, but in this case, you've wounded it and chased it away. Is that sufficient? Uncle Jura, you're giving me the moral answer again. I can sense it when you're lying and don't believe what you say. I'm young, but I know it when I hear it. Uncle Jura will kill anyone that even scratches us, maybe only TreeTree can stop him. Jura shrugs and rubs his head. Heh. Well, it's actually comes with experience, young Lozon. When you meet more people and meet more monsters, you will be able to better judge who do you spare, and who do you kill. So that was the morally correct answer. I think the standard education that all elves, all parents try to give, is to be morally just. But I live in a world of wars. Even 8-year-old children like myself know the morally correct is just words. I live in a world where might makes right. Where heroes can order nations, because their powers give them that right. Where demons can crush nations overnight, because their might is stronger. Jura pauses, kneels next to me and rubs me on the head. Yes. I have to tell you what is morally correct to do. When you deviate from them, you must be able to answer to yourself, why did you deviate from what is morally correct? I may not truly believe in them, but that is because I know what is important to me. Well, a hero should do what is morally just. Do they? Maybe there are other ways of thinking. Or I am trying to take the easy way out. I sometimes think being a hero is really hard. All these types of justice, fairness, how do they think about these kind of things in the heat of battle? A week later, I asked TreeTree to let me fight the forest monsters again. I thought long about it. I mean, it's hard to think about it. I'm only 8, and I get headaches when I think for too long, and when I do, I feel like going to the playroom and just play with my wooden toys again. So why do you want to fight again? Jura asks. Maybe a part of him wishes I stop this hero dream of mine. I sometimes still hear Uncle Jura say that when he talks with Mom. I don't know. I just want to. Maybe I will get better. That's not a good reason. I just want to. I insist. Just because you want does not mean you can get. Uncle Jura frowns and gives me that look when I am being a bit difficult. Okay. But I still want to fight monsters. I want to level up, gain experience. Jura sighs, and he probably knows I'll run to the forest myself anyway, since TreeTree's always there looking out for us. Fine, be careful. So I found another small wolf to fight. There are lesser animals, like those giant rats or big squirrel-like stuff that live in the forest, eating whatever fruits and leaves that grow here. This time, I want to beat it, but maybe I don't have to kill it. Do I still get experience that way? We spot each other and the wolf sizes me up. I think that's what it's doing when its eyes seem to roam. Hello, wolf. I'd like to fight you. The wolf growls. Well, I growl back. Naturally, my growl isn't really threatening. It enters into a combat stance, so do I, my spear and dagger ready. It charges again, same movement like the earlier wolf. Somehow the animals have move sets that we can learn. I duck. Power strike. But this time, I aim somewhere in the side. It won't kill it instantly, but it'll do some harm. The wolf winces in pain, and my dagger on my left hand swings in, and lands a few cuts. It swipes and its claws manage to scratch me. Ow wow wow. That really, really hurt. I'm bleeding, a gash right on my left arm, from my wrist up till my elbow, and it's bleeding. Pain. I feel like my entire left hand stings. Mom won't like that. I better get back and hope it doesn't fester. The wolf is injured too, the cuts and the stab from the spear is causing it to bleed. I think it did to me. Lozan, are you all right? TreeTree speaks into my head. Fine, bleeding. Can you help me later? Okay. The wolf charges, trying to take advantage of the time I am still talking to TreeTree. But my instincts, born from years of dreams and constant practice, manage to react in time, and so I duck and stab the wolf again in the abdomen with my short spear. It whimpers as it falls onto the dirt floor. And its voice weakens. It's defenseless, the second stab drained its strength, and it could only limp. It still looks at me. This time, its eyes a mix of anger and fear. Should I kill it? I wonder to myself. My left hand is bleeding, blood's dripping, and yet my grip on the dagger remains. The wolf takes 2 steps back, limping. Should I? It hurt me. What would a hero do? Depends on which hero, isn't it? Some would kill this wounded wolf, some would spare it, if it shows no further hostility. If I were a hero, what would I do? My eyes meet with the wolf again. It growls at me as it steps back. I think I'll take its life. I thrust my spear at the wolf. A loud clang. My spear, blocked by Jura's sword. He pushes my spear back, turns, and then shoos the wolf away, and lets the wolf slowly limp off. Lozon. He turns and notices the bleeding on my left arm. Why'd you stop me, Uncle Jura? Why did he block my spear? I think you're not ready to take a life yet. Is it? Why? Because you are not. Now don't argue with me and let's go back to TreeTree, and get that gash patched up, before your mommy nags me for not looking after you. I sigh. Oh well. Stats page. Lozon Ricola, level 20, cumulative. Elf girl, aged 8. Elf warrior, level 11. Skills. Power strike, basic evasive step spear experience, medium dagger experience, low basic pain endurance, improved reaction, basic shadow stab. Villager, 4 levels. Skills. Disease resistance, basic cotton work, basic olive work, advanced. General, 5 levels. Skills. Basic endurance, advanced reading and writing, common tongue, blessed by a soul tree. Spazer. Okay, next regular chapter, next week. Year 77, month 10. Laufen, Jura, Bell, Emile, Lozon, even Wallen, Brislock came back. They meet in the main room in the secret hideout, seated in a circle. I called everyone here to discuss the announcement from the High Council. Jura starts their meeting. The High Council announced the arrangement a day ago, after formalizing the necessary amendments to their rules and laws, to incorporate the existence of the new positions and institutions. How could we not? Wallen shrugs. Everyone in my workplace is talking about it, and asking me whether I get anything. Jura sighs. First of all, you might have heard the story, but let's just go through why this is happening. TreeTree has decided that he wants a larger role in the affairs of Newfrika, since TreeTree has been tangled in multiple battles due to Newfrika's hostile relationship with Sulla, and providing free protection without compensation or representation isn't what TreeTree considers to be an ideal arrangement. This will give TreeTree the greater ability to choose the battles it fights, and avoids those it doesn't want to participate in. But isn't that what tree spirits do? Brislock asks. Tree spirits raised by elves protect their cities and capitals. Are they not benevolent spirits of the earth that protects the inhabitants and their surroundings? That's a story often passed down, but the truth is not so simple. We do not know what price does the elven nations pay to their tree spirits in order to obtain their assistance. If there are, I would think they are secrets of the kings and the royal court. Perhaps the tree spirits of those nations owe the elves some kind of favor too. We cannot use the charity of other tree spirits as an expectation of TreeTree's demands and conduct. The other elves nod, prompting Jura to continue. A healthy ecosystem must have everyone playing their part. A Newfrika that does not contribute back to the system is not productive to the entire valley. Ecosystem? Yeah, a word from TreeTree. It means the system of how each individual and creature in the valley interacts with each other. An awkward pause. Back to the announcement. TreeTree decided to appoint me Supreme Council, and Laufen as Vice Council, of the newly set up Valtrian Order. Now, what this means is that, both of us are now part of the High Council of Newfrika. Some of them say it's a power grab. Wallen voices out the rumors from the ground. There's plenty other such thoughts and rumors passing around. In some ways, it is. Jura nods. Fact is, a third of all tax collected are now under our control, and so is a third of the militia. A skeleton group of administrative staff and treasury has been assigned to assist the Valtrian Order as well. And that is a heavy burden we now have to bear to fulfill TreeTree's will. Another moment of silence as everyone digests the meaning of this change. It's big, since the 7 of them are named as the selected, special individuals that TreeTree has commanded to be specially protected. In time, this may mean having guards assigned to each of them. Any thoughts? Wallen grumbles, Uncle Jura, to be honest, I don't really care what TreeTree wants to do. I am trying to move on, actually. We lived years under the TreeTree's care and protection, like refugees, like war victims, and now, there is a town that springs up next to Freaka, one of non-humans like us, that we can return and now live a life as regular people again. A life similar to the past before all this destruction. I even have a job now, and friends. Jura pauses and he looks at Wallen. TreeTree. But before Jura could continue his response, Wallen already continued. I understand that all this is actually possible because TreeTree's presence and protection of New Freaka. But this pronouncement does make our life a little bit more complicated. I understand. After living so long in the shadows of war, all of us would really cherish these moments of normalcy and calm. I would like to continue having a normal, like everyone else. Live a life in a town, work. Being a part of the ruling elite is something that never crossed my mind. Wallen and Bristlock moved to New Freaka to work and live some time ago, and frankly, I can see why. It's disruptive for the life you've tried to rebuild in New Freaka, but please, bear with us. There's bigger things at play here. Jura nods. I'll try not to disrupt your life as much as we can, so you can still live some of that normal life. But things will change, and not everything will remain normal. Wallen sighs. I suppose that will be all I can ask. It's Brislocka's turn to speak. We're going to be special, isn't it? Lawfen nods. Yes. A strange twist of fate, but we are now a special group in this valley. Well, with some reluctance, the 7 elves accepted their fate. The announcement was rather confusing to the populace of New Freaka, but to most of them, it's something they soon forgot, since reorganizations at the top happen frequently, and for refugees who lived through changes of power, such things are common. Every time a king changes, there's bound to be some restructuring. So the new organization of the season is the Valtrian Order. That's the name I came up with, just a combination of the words valley and tree. A few days later. Greetings. The exiled wizard of Baruch visits the inner courtyard of my main tree, surprising Jura, who's taking a rest, a little overwhelmed from the sudden influx of matters requiring his attention. Ah, Wizard Madius. I hear that you are hiring, Supreme Council. The wizard smiles and bows. Jura coughs at the title and the bow, perhaps the wizard is mocking him. Ah, yes. Well, good. Allow me to get to the point. I would like to offer my services to the tree spirit. Jura coughs quite hard, and I think he's choking. After a few coughs he recovers, and looks into the wizard's eyes. Surely, you jest. No. I mean it. I would like to offer my services to the tree spirit, and the Valtrian Order, and it's something I've been thinking for days since I found about the whole Valtrian Order's setup. Jura could not answer, so he just pauses. Accepted. I didn't let Jura say more. I do have need for a mage's services, so the fact that he comes and offers it is very much welcome. Whether he has the right motives, that can be sorted out later. As it is, I needed someone as a counterpoint to Alexis, to share knowledge of the magics from a different source, and Alexis, as a foreign hero, lacks the nuts and bolts of magic, since her power over magic is likely to be innate, something of a gift arising from her cheap power. A regular mage like Madius would likely have a more robust understanding of basic magic, as he has to explore it in bits and pieces since young. The wizard staggers back, not spoken to me telepathically before. Ah. Apologies. It is just a surprise to hear the voice in my head, so this is what Yvonne and the counselors hear when they speak of the tree spirit. Welcome, wizard. We have much to speak about. Jura, can you please summon the captains of the existing Valtrian Order? I wish to speak to them later. Jura nods and leaves, his cape fluttering as he walks. He has a special uniform made for him, one that identifies him as Supreme Council, and everywhere he goes, a few of the Valtrian guards would accompany him. There would be plans for a new set of uniforms for the Valtrian guards, but that is a lesser priority, so for now, their uniform remain as it was. So, wizard. I believe your name is Matius. He nods. All right. Matius, welcome to the team, and first of all, as a tree who doesn't get to go out much, my knowledge about the wider world is really limited. So tell me, what do you know about the wider world? And heroes? And of that void magic the princess encountered? He pauses and stops. That's a lot to go through, but are you referring to my research back in Baruch? That would be a good place to start. I lead him, using the vines, to one of the subsidiary tree's external rooms. Since some of the elves moved out, it has been repurposed into more of a study for Lausanne. She's out now, so we can use it. I'm hoping to make a library here someday. Back then, I am researching on the magics of the heroes, so I collected various books and writings left by the heroes of the past. One of such items is the mad hero, Arsène Amir, which, obsessed on summoning more of his friends. May I ask why? The king's curious about the origins of their power. By discovering how they are summoned, perhaps we could glean a hint. Oh? Kings, in the case of the High King of Baruch, is a very old man, he is close to a 100 this year. So he has met many generations of heroes, who went on to slay the demon kings. When he was only a teenager, he met a hero who appeared in the Baruch, freshly summoned by the gods. Our king offered him shelter, and spoke to him at length, and came to understand that the heroes all come from another world way unlike our own. But at the back of his mind, he really wanted to know where the hero's power comes from, and whether, just whether, there's a way to gain that power for himself. Well, okay. The High King of Baruch just kind of went up in the list of threats, but somehow the wizard still talks of him rather reverentially. Well, the hero didn't know much, only knew that each of the gods give a few heroes their blessing, and as such, that generation, there were 10 of them, scattered throughout the world. Anyway, the point is, the king seen the heroes when they are freshly summoned. The hero he met then, his name is André, had the power of bending earth, such that everything was drawn to him, or away from him. He could make things heavy, or light. Matius, are you going off tangent? When the king met the last generation of heroes, he was, rather disappointed. Their powers are still amazing by most measure, but yet, compared to André the Earthbreaker, there was just too large a gap. So, the king wondered whether there's a mistake in the summoning of heroes. Well, the heroes still beat the demon king, did they not? I think heroes should be judged on whether they beat the demon king. That's their purpose, right? The point I tried to make to my king is there's just too many different types of heroes. Consider the story from 220 years ago, there was only a single hero summoned. And a single hero became Emperor Taxamor Nungsari. That hero later is the founder of the Darmun dynasty, which later splintered into the Takta, Nung, Sulla, the now destroyed Moras and Fikri's kingdoms. I think you didn't answer the question, isn't it? Sounds like there's nothing much, other than history. I mean, so what if? If my own experience serves as a guide, it could be their attempted extraction of souls didn't work that well, maybe the truck that's supposed to hit the bus missed, and the rest of the passengers survived. Well, yes. Matius slouches, his head downcast. My research got nowhere. It seems a lot of it is on the individuals and some strange stroke of luck. And it's not as if the lesser number of heroes is always stronger than when more heroes are summoned. For every theory I came up with, there's always some other incident that proves otherwise. Okay. So heroes are random. Actually, does he know about star mana? Yes. If there's anything that I actually did find, is that heroes are getting younger. And I have no idea why. Huh? Okay, that's absolutely a letdown. I was hoping to gain some insights into heroes and the Demon King, but looks like I'll have to try elsewhere. Never mind, since he seems rather knowledgeable of history, let's try a different question. Anyway, since we are also talking a bit about history. Is there a time before heroes? The wizard sips his tea and thinks. There is supposed to be a time before heroes and Demon King, but it is millenniums ago, and we don't have any records. When is the first documented demon king? We also don't know. There was a demon king, Demon King Amadeus, that destroyed close to 80% of the world, and with it most of the world's written records. So the information predating Demon King Amadeus is scarce, and the word-of-mouth stories are not reliable. Fine, tell me about Demon King Amadeus. How did the world defeat it from such a horrible state? The legends of that era is not very consistent. It did happen about many thousands of years ago. There are a few theories. The most believed one is that a group of heroes were summoned in the scattered islands, and they later defeated the Demon King. Has any other Demon King come close to that level of destruction? Not many, but a few notable Demon Kings did destroy at least a few continents each. That we know of, Amadeus is successful enough to destroy all the continents. Why didn't the heroes stop them? Again, we have very little knowledge. My own understanding is, it's a case of the heroes being summoned too late, and needed time to get stronger. In quite a few cases with other demon kings, overconfident heroes tried when they are not ready and got killed. How'd the world recover from something like Demon King Amadeus? I'd think there's survivors, just a lot of them in hiding. And the heroes that defeated Amadeus went out to defeat 2 more demon kings, so the legend goes, so that gave the world some time to recover from the extensive damage. But all this is really word of mouth, since written records during the era is really rare. We don't really even know whether the destruction is really that extensive, since the records from that time of reconstruction is very rare. Has there ever been instances where heroes were summoned twice? Not that I know of, but possible. Medius seems totally clueless on this. Fine. Tell me about this 10-year Demon King cycle. I mean, that's something that I wonder about. Why 10 years? Oh. We have no idea why. Perhaps it's some quirk in the stars. It's not a rule though, there's been exceptions a lot of times, and we have no idea why either. Okay, not helping. Let's try other kinds of questions. Why did the world leave all the fighting to heroes? Why not the locals? Are there nobody at the level of the heroes? It's just the way it always has been. Really? But I would think it's really hard. Even slaying a demon champion needs very high-level fighters and mages. Once again, not helping. Is there some level wall or ceiling that exists for the locals that the world must rely on external powers? Never mind then. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I will borrow your knowledge of history more. You are welcome, consider it a proof of my sincerity. Medius nods and takes a sip from the wooden cup. Anyway, why do you want to serve me? When you managed to undo the damage suffered by the princess, I realized that you must be a great and powerful being. To serve a great being is a privilege and honor, and I hope to be part of that greatness. Maybe the greatness would rub off a bit on me. A glory chaser. I'll need to watch him a bit more carefully. Greatness may not be something I can offer. I can offer you fruits. Medius laughs as a bowl of fruits appeared before him. He smiles, grabs one, and bites. Year 77, month 11. An envoy from Sulla came, bearing strange news. One of unconditional ceasefire. A truce. Surely, such an offer soon riled up the entire High Council, who are outraged, happy, greedy. Pretty much everything. It is the first time Jura seats on the High Council, with his 33% voting rights on such matters, and a right to veto certain decisions. We have the advantage, we should demand reparations from Sulla. One of the councillors said. They are afraid, now they want a truce. I grow tired of war. Another councillor asks, perhaps we should just take it. No. Sulla has caused us a great deal of harm, we should not take it without compensation. As they argue, they eventually settled into 2 camps, a group demanding extra compensation, another saying to accept. So, Yvonne, as the chair of the High Council, turns to Jura. Supreme Council, as representative of the tree spirit, would you have any words to add? Tree spirit is of the view we should accept it. Ongoing combat is not productive for the valley, there are bigger concerns. My first concern is the demonic rifts. Those should start appearing very soon, as those happen well in advance of the Demon King's arrival. But Sulla's not exactly a trustworthy country to deal with. We could accept the truce and they'll break it. So, we do not have any offensive capability at the moment. A truce is good for us, since it allows to trade with Sulla. With that, the truce is accepted, since Jura's voting rights meant almost all of the councillors have to oppose Jura to get anything through. Of course, this is rather shocking to Sulla's envoy as well, who expected a rejection, and was rather prepared to die. Year 77 month 12. Here's the man you asked me to find, tree spirit. I'll leave the room now. Jura bows and leaves the old man standing alone in the small room, right next to the tree of prayers. It's a special room, as it's more of a courtyard, with one tree in the middle, with sunlight coming in from above. It's winter, so there's some snow coming in. The old man, a half-elf, looks around and shrugs. What's this? And I speak into his head. Hello, Wesley. He pauses and tries to see whether there's anyone else in the room. Is this some trick? Or magic? I give him some time, and after a while he stops. Fine. Who are you? I'm TreeTree, the tree spirit of the valley. He rubs his chin. Huh, so there really is a tree spirit. So what can I do for you? I'd like you to help conduct some ceremonies for me. Something a person like yourself, a former priest, can do. What kind of ceremonies? Simple ones. I have a few in mind, for the dying, for death, and for births. Lawfen will assist you, but she is not fit for the role of a master of ceremonies. Are you keen? The man pauses. What did I get? A fair pay, accommodation. And some tea to help with the aches you have. Additional things can be discussed. The man paces and walks around the courtyard a few times. Clearly this is something he's thinking much about, until he pauses and asks. Which god am I praying to? None. His face is that of shock. So, what rituals are we actually doing? I'll let you know, but first, are you keen? The first of the ceremonies happened a few days later. One of the older folk in New Frika passed away. In New Frika, the population comprises a mix of elves, dwarves, centaurs, treefolk, half-elves, some lizardmen and quite a few more others, though elves form the bulk of them. So there's many ways of going about the corpse, such as cremation, burial, magical deconstruction, petrification or transformation into a statue. The presence of magic adds a large variety of possible ways a corpse can be sent off. Anyway, that's just how things are elsewhere. What's this? An elderly woman, the deceased's wife, asks, as the corpse of the old man is brought in by some of the guards on stretchers. Wesley smiles, a calm, reassuring smile from years of training as a priest, and he warmly greets the elderly woman. New Frika's welcomed the tree spirit into its fold, and this is one of the many ways the great tree has given us his gifts. It's a large open space, and there's a curved, bent tree, as if the tree grew up, then sideways. Along its trunk, there is a large opening in it filled with greenish liquid. Multiple flowers dot the side of that trunk. Wesley nods to the guards and a few of the men assist to place the corpse of the old man slowly into the opening. With this, the dead will be one with the tree spirit, his soul on their journey to the world beyond. The corpse slowly sinks into the thick greenish liquid, and for effect, the flowers around the trunk start to bloom a bit bigger, and a pleasant, calming, soothing scent is released into the room. There's even some wind and rustling sounds to add to the moment. And when the corpse fully sinks and disappears into the green liquid, the flowers glow slightly. The family cries for a good hour, as Wesley speaks to each of the family, giving them a blessing. He then picks the flowers from the side of the trunk, and passes one to each of the family members. What happens to the body? It is now with the tree spirit, and has found peace, at last. Wesley says, and somehow, it's probably due to his past priest levels, it's really convincing. These flowers contain the essences of your deceased father, and they will last longer than normal flowers, but they will too fade after a year. Think it as a reminder of he who has now left us. The elderly woman nods. Is there something more permanent, perhaps a marker that we can get to remind us of our beloved? Wesley smiles and he touches the trunk. And from the greenish liquid, a small bone floats up. He carefully picks it up with a special spoon and places it in a ceremonial wooden bowl. Ah yes. This is the condensed bones of your father. Keep it as you wish or make it into something. The elderly woman accepts with tears in her eyes, and after a bit more small talk, the entire family leaves. Wesley breathes a huge sigh of relief. It's the first time this ceremony is shown to the citizens of New Freaka, and even the guards themselves have not seen it. How'd it go? Wesley asks, and only Loffen remains inside the courtyard of death. There's some proposed names on the courtyard, perhaps to call it the Garden of Return, to signify one's return to the tree spirit. I quite like it, but I'm still pondering for other names before finalizing it with Wesley and Loffen, since Loffen's going to play a larger role in the rituals and religious aspects of the Valtrian order. Good. Is that really the bone of the deceased? Yes. Ah, good. I've not lied then. What did both of you think of the ceremony? Wesley sits and smokes some kind of rolled leaves, and he nods. It's easy. I believe the tale will spread soon, and more families will ask for this ceremony. Any views on how to improve it? Loffen shakes her head. I like it, but let me sleep on it a little. Maybe I'll get some ideas later. Me too. I'm so nervous doing it for the first time. All I want to do is just get a hang of it first. Very well, it's a good first time. Go get some rest. The both nod and leave the courtyard, and I return into my soul realm to have a look at the results of the ceremony. The dead soul is in good condition and a state of calm. Reincarnation to the next world is going to be quite a breeze. It's actually an interesting modification of the elven tradition of burying the dead next to the soul trees, and instead go for the route of direct absorption. Well, that's fine, but my focus is on collection, so I check my log. Amen, no seeds. Well, at least there's some essences. This ceremony is actually derived from that little experience I had with both Alexis and later Fockley, and that exposed tree trunk is really a modified biolab pod. The idea I had is really rather simple. I want more of the seeds that came with Fockley's death, and I'm really keen to try and get more of such seeds by way of absorbing the corpses of the dead and the dying. By giving the citizens, the families a pleasant experience, I'm hoping to get fresher dead, and with that, a higher chance of harvesting whatever I can get. A part of me feels a little tiny bit bad for desecrating the dead, but the bulk of me feels it's totally fine, since I'm playing the religious role here. And besides, they'll just end up burning the body, so that's not exactly any better than what I'm doing. Well, the next ceremony is something where Loffen plays a bigger role. A birth and babies. In some worlds, there are rituals like baptisms, or flower baths, or special chants to bless a newborn. Children is our future. And my future. Congratulations on the baby. Loffen bows and shakes the hand of the young mother, the father next to her watches. The little infant cradled in the mother's arms cry a little, and the mother quickly shakes and tries to soothe the baby. Ah, what can we do for you? As the vice council of the Valtrian order, I'd like to present a small present for the family, for the newborn. Loffen hands over a basket, containing a few bottles. That bottle contains a special liquid made from the sap of the tree spirit. It will boost the infant's strength and vitality. It'll also help with the cold weather. Made using the childcare corner's special syrup, mixed with some essences, some minerals, it should give a good boost to any weak baby, and gives a shot of warmth to help the baby tide through winter. That other bottle is something for the sick babies, if they have a fever or a cold, or just don't look too well. Well, I had something given to Roma back when he was a tiny baby, so this is the same thing, bottled up. Made from a healing juice, condensed into a thick gooey sweet syrup. That last one is if the baby's hungry but the mommy's out of milk. It's a thick preserved juice containing a mix of nutrients, meant to temporarily tide over the child's hunger. Again, made from the childcare corner. Ah. The father and mother seem rather surprised, but the father seems afraid to receive, as is normal for gifts. Perhaps there's some expectation of payment, or some kind of subtle extortion, as refugees often encounter in their journeys. It's free, a gift with no strings. It's something the Valtrian order wants to do for the children born of the valley. Loffen bows, and then she starts to walk out. She flashes a warm, motherly smile before she walks out. Please let me know if you have any challenges with the child. Well, although Loffen's official title is now vice consul, she's not exactly keen to participate in the political kind of activities, so, as with all quasi-religious, militant organizations, there should be someone to spearhead the public service, charitable, social elements of the organization. Loffen's duties are to organize the gifts for the newly born, set up a creche for young children and babies within the Valtrian order's space, an orphanage for the orphans, and a kindergarten and combat-oriented school for the older kids. Charity and such social services soften the image of the Valtrian order, and cultivate have a generation with favorable views of the order. There's a lot of births on average, about 5 to 7 per day, so Loffen's got many homes to visit. In time, Emile, Belle and the workers will also play the role of delivering these gifts, but for now, the 2 younger ladies are helping out as her assistants. Some of the parents would outright refuse the gifts, and that's fine. It's given at no compulsion, and Loffen herself would not push. After all, parents have the right to choose what they give to their infants. Gradually, though, this is helping to build a positive reputation for the Valtrian order, and build public support for this new entity that suddenly emerged. As part of the transition to the newly set up Valtrian order, a large patch of land around the Tree of Prayer has been transferred over, so a bit of construction work is going on to build all the facilities required, though we had to prioritize of the burial services first, which is fairly easy since it's mostly just setting up the space for the tree. Also, I'd also like to have the Valtrian order earn some income independent of the tax collections, in order to fund all the other ideas I have in my head for my gradual takeover of New Frika. One of these ideas is to set up a clinic, or a healing chamber of some kind, using the biolab and the medical juices. With this, I could charge adventurers, soldiers and whatnot a fee for using my healing services, similar to how it is for other healers all around the world. This won't be much, but it'll help subsidize the cost of staff. Next would be to sell some special products. I've got some in mind, perhaps the ginseng. If I could make them of an acceptable quality, they would probably sell for a good price. And higher quality crops, directly to the market. But that would involve dedicating some of the subsidiary trees for that purposes. Or a special series of olive oils for ceremonial use and sale. I think that could sell since people love enchanted stuff. The processed, preserved healing fruits is also a potential product, but whether it's a worthwhile venture may depend on the price. I also have my ability to make wood products using my wood-shaping magic, but I think that's probably not a good use of my time unless I can make them automatically. Additionally, the beetles could go and kill monsters and bring back some loot for sale. Oh wait. My large beetle pods are ready too. Large beetle pods, completed enhanced interior structures completed. Fruit bombs, increased range and power completed. iTree stage I research option unlocked, 15 months remaining beetle, anti-magma armors stage 2 to 6 months remaining tree, volcanic adaptation stage 3 to 15 months remaining roots, volcanic mineral harvesting, stage 1 to 5 months remaining. I had an epiphany one day, which is, there's sulfur in the volcano. Shouldn't that allow me to make sulfuric acid? Would I be able to have fruits with highly corrosive acid in it? Or beetles that spit acid? A ranged unit. As a result, I just had to conduct research on the ability of my volcano-adapted subsidiary trees' roots to safely absorb sulfur through their roots. I think that would be the first step in acquiring any sort of ranged unit. So, I'm going to have larger beetles, hopefully ranged beetles, and also flying beetles, acidic corrosive beetles. Plenty of variation in the beetle family. Of course, this makes Horns rather happy. I still haven't figured out how to get that step from sulfur to acid, but I'll figure it out once we get there. Perhaps it'll be some kind of large segregated tank where the sulfur is processed. Oh well. I think I'm starting to have a bit more things going on than I can handle. I think I need help. Time to create another artificial soul. Year 78 Month 1. An eruption. A fine way to start the new year, really. The damned volcano erupted and destroyed every single thing near it. Close to half of my beetles failed to escape, so they died, all buried under debris, dust, lava, rocks and well, all the other things that volcanoes tend to spit out. I mean, I sort of figured that volcanoes, especially one still pumping out lava, would be somewhat dangerous, but I guess after not seeing any major eruption, I thought it's one of those stable volcanoes. To some extent, I guess I'm a little complacent there. But still, why didn't my roots sense anything? Don't volcanoes have tremors or minor quakes before going off like that? Or does the magic in this world messes with such processes? Oh well, this is a minor setback, a bit of delay to my volcano expansion plans. If life went too easy, I'd probably think something bad is gonna happen real soon. Probably pushes the plans back by a couple of months, to let the environment settle down, and also rebuild my forces, since I do need to regenerate the beetles before attempting my assault on the magma golems that spawn closer to the now partly exposed caldera. I'm rather eager to test out the new large beetles in combat, since they are bigger, and have bigger legs and horns, to see how they perform against those golems. So I turn my attention to the next few things I have in mind. In New Freaka, there's a massive hall with a few external biolabs, and Jura is helping to guide the Valtrian soldiers. The hall itself is filled with animals and plants, gathered from the region, an exercise we started last month. The men were sitting idle, so we sent them out on missions to collect different kinds of plants and animals. As many as they could find, whatever they've not seen before, or whatever they notice that's different from New Freaka, and bring it back. Thanks to this exercise, I'm now going through all the plants and animals they've brought back. 5 biolabs, side by side, and the soldiers, under Jura's supervision, help to put all the specimens in. After the analysis, some soldiers are tasked to bring them to a patch of empty land and pass them to a different group, those with farming or planting skills, for them to plant. The intention is fairly simple: there's a lack of plant diversity in the valley, and that needs to be addressed. Secondly, I'm hoping to somehow unlock more unique trees, like the ginseng trees, such that I can produce new items. Third, new species of crops would lead to me having more subsidiary tree, crops, variety. And now, I have the manpower to push these guys out on a regional harvesting mission. The process of analyzing the plants took 5 days, and the animals another 4 days. The reason I asked for the animals is actually just to throw off whoever's watching us, but it's a waste to not analyze the animals after collecting them. So after the animals were scanned by the biolabs, they're placed in an area that's meant to be a menagerie. New crop species unlocked: wheat, jackfruit, light corn, black potato, rye, red hops, blueberry, fireberry. New tree type unlocked: common herbal bushes. Bushes containing a wide variety of herbs. Herb varieties appear at random. How's the register coming along? It'll take some time, Supreme Council. The young man, a junior herbalist, bows when responding to Jura's question. It's something the tree spirit wants done as soon as possible. This is a big task. Well, actually Trevor and Dimitri already built a compilation of the plants we now have in the valley, and their characteristics that they can identify using the data from the biolabs. But I had Jura hire a herbalist to start work on a physical copy of a register. Just to compare the kind of information a herbalist would normally take down, and one prepared by my tree minds. The young man bows. I'm honored, and I can tell it is an important exercise. The herbalist, together with the gardeners and other farmhands, will be the ones managing the garden in the compound of the Valtrian Order. It's one of those odd jobs. As for the animals, I've left them to some of the rangers to care for. In the town of New Freaka, there are some rangers and some of flock tenders or herders that have some skills with animals, so they are the ones looking after the collection of animals. It's not a perfect match in terms of skill and job class, but oh well. Maybe they'll gain the class someday. Year 78 Month 2. The Valkyrie and Order separation exercise this month. The military force that's transferred to us is a little too large to my liking, and their competencies a bit lacking, so, like what companies do when their staff size is not optimal, we have retrenchments. I kinda feel like walking up to guys and tell them, "You're fired." But that's not exactly a nice way to do things. Jura and the captains identified those who are not so good at their jobs, based on their performance during the collection exercise, spoke these non-performing soldiers whether they have other secondary talents they want to share, whether they want to take part in the other roles happening in the order, or take the money and go find another job. I mean, if I'm going to be hiring herbalists and all those other specialists, I need money, and money isn't free, so gotta reshuffle them around. Priorities. One must cut away the rotting branch for a new one to grow. Of course, there is plenty of crying, plenty of anger, and plenty of cussing. Maybe some retaliation. Ivy. Yes, master. Monitor those we have fired. See whether they do anything unusual. Let me know if there are any attempted retaliation, but do not interfere unless I instruct you to. As you command. My new tree mind, and unlike Trevor or Dimitri, who has responsibility to watch the valley and the forest, Ivy's task is focused on the Valkyrian order, observing the citizens and reporting any unusual matters. I also task her to play a hidden watcher on all financial transactions and trade transactions. Watching the movements of some 3,000 to 4,000 employees of the Valkyrian order is a laborious affair, even if there are trees everywhere, and Ivy pretty much has little capacity to do anything else. A part of me feels like I have become that which I hated in my past life, the big brother who intrudes in on everyone's privacy, that overly micromanaging boss that looks through everything I do with a fine-toothed comb, but this is a magical world, and I have to pick the bigger bad here. Curbing corruption, finding traitors take priority here. Even in their somewhat perilous situation, people will find ways to cheat, or steal, to take a little more for themselves. So I thought I would be ready, since I know about it and know it exists. Nobody's innocent. But Ivy's report still stunned me. The extent of it. All of the employees engage in at least one minor misconduct. It's usually relatively small, like a coin or two per transaction, or a little slip of coin to move up the queue in the burial services. Some soldiers would steal utensils from the mess hall and bring home for their family. Or intentionally tearing a piece of uniform so that they can use the cloth for something else. Or administrative staff stealing paper or writing equipment. I sigh. When Ivy first reported the extent of such things, I just froze. But before I could lash out in anger and kill all these people. Were you expecting saints from these former refugees? The fact that they adapted to a new way of life so quickly is already admirable. Mila sometimes dispenses a bit of wisdom. Well, true. This world has no proper regimented education system to teach a sense of morals, and parents trying to survive probably have a different set of morals than me. If there isn't enough time or stability for it to really sink in, since the world gets hammered by the Demon King every now and then. If there's anywhere with a proper education system, it's probably in those cloud cities, or the moving giant turtle islands, or the walking towers of the great deserts. I wonder how many years of formal education to the citizens of New Freaka have. Some other day's worries. Ultimately, I decided to just have the worst offenders retrenched, and decide to just put up with the minor infractions among the rest. Perhaps someday I would get a group of morally upright employees, but for now, this is the cards I have. Should I continue monitoring them, Master? Ivy's not fond of the task, but she still obeys me. Well, yes. It's taking up most of my processing ability, Master. Filtering through all the language and small talk is really challenging. Well. Fine, will it help if you restrict the scope to within our compounds and just the area around them? A lesser area would mean less to monitor, yes it will help a bit. But I estimate it'll still use up 70% of my available processing power. Unfortunately I'll need someone to watch these guys, please bear with it. Maybe it'll get easier once you gain some levels. As you command, Master. Year 78 month to week 3. The first large beetles emerge from their pods. The volcano kind of started to stabilize, so I send the large volcano-adapted beetles on their first missions. This is why they are created, after all. They easily dispatch any of the lesser monsters that appear, but their first encounter with the massive magma golems is disappointing. Though they now have the size, they still lack the necessary firepower to take out the golems. At least they can take 3 punches from the large golems before dying, unlike regular beetles, who just get squashed underfoot. According to Jura and the data gathered from the Adventurers Guild in New Freaka, magma golems are considered monsters for adventurers around the level 50 to 60, and with suitable gear. A person with suitable skills could possibly take one out at level 40. Given that my regular beetles are a match of soldiers around level 20 to 30, I guess the large beetles still need a lot more upgrades to give those magma golems a good fight. Back to the research queue. TreeTree stage I research option unlocked, 13 months remaining beetle, anti-magma armors stage 2 to 4 months remaining tree, volcanic adaptation stage 3 to 13 months remaining roots, volcanic mineral harvesting, stage 1 to 3 months remaining. Following the acquisition of the various new plant species, I had both Dimitri and Trevor attempt to use their abilities to improve the plant diversity in the valley. To some extent, the valley in both sides is largely dominated with my type of tree, though at least the TreeTree of mana grants some visual varieties. I may need to look up some pollens and bees and flowering plants as well. Oh well. Well, at least with the improved inflow of gems and rare crystals, I've managed to upgrade the rootnet to support a larger capacity of tree energy. The upgraded rootnet will take up to 100,000 normal trees, which also means more artificial souls. I'd probably like to make some more tree mines to take some load off Ivy, since the task of monitoring so many people is a monumental task. TreeTree. I've got a proposal. A proposal from Alexis. Well, let's hear it. I've been talking to Mila, and I'm thinking of using the biolab to make a body. Not a full flesh and blood kind of body since it's clearly not at that level, but I'm thinking of experimenting with treefolk corpses, as a transition between regular sentient species and, well, trees. Well, my theory is that treefolk exists as some kind of magical evolutionary in between a tree and regular humans. So, looking at treefolk is a good starting point to figure out what are the magical mechanics within their body which allows them to do what they do. So you're asking for my permission to do this experiment? Yes. The goal is to be able to create flexible wooden, armors as a vessel for souls. I think she meant robots. She wants to create a body for herself. Well, there is still that dryad body that's formed from her corpse. Maybe she forgot about that already. I am rather fond of the treefolk. They give me no trouble, have shown willingness to defend the valley when instructed, and have been polite and respectful whenever contacted. So that's a no. I will ask the treefolks for their permission. Conducting autopsies on the dead should be approved by their kin. That makes sense. Well, Alexis seems to understand that at least. There is also one other thing. I am thinking of expanding. I'll need space and materials and some of your beetles. What do you mean? I reached level 30, and I have this new skill called Locational Survey Tools. It allows me to take control of a few beetles and place research equipment on them, and this will speed up research on environment resistances. Kind of making a research-oriented scout out of the beetle. I can operate 2 at any one time. Actually, I think that sounds a bit like the moon buggy, but an actual bug. Or perhaps the Mars rover. Fascinating. She's going into the whole science route, which makes sense as a spirit haunting a massive research biolab. Would a flying bug with this be essentially a flying science vessel? Fine, you get 2 beetles. Let me know of the materials. Alexis claps her ghostly hands in joy. Thank you. The treefolk chiefs visit a few days later. 3 of them, 1 from before, and 2 I have not met. It seems their number has increased over the years, as immigration brings more and more tree folks to the valley. It is an honor to be summoned by the tree spirit. The 3 tree folks prostrate before me. I had forgotten that tree folks revere tree spirits. Your presence bathes the entire valley in a warm energy that fuels our health and gives us strength. Wait, do my powers work on tree folk? Why does he talk like it does? Holy cow, if it does, that opens up a big, no, giant can of worms I need to explore. You feel my presence? The oldest of the tree folk, the one I met before, still prostrating on the floor, is the one to speak. We always have the energy and radiance through the roots. Each step we take, we feel your growing dominion. Even in the depths of winter, we feel and share in the warmth through our rooted feet. Wait, is he trying to just suck up to me? Anyway, let's get down to it. The reason I wish to speak to you is to talk about the dead and the deceased. I'd like to first understand about cultural norm, where the body of the deceased treefolk is normally split into many parts, some as tools, some as fertilizer, and some as ornaments. Is this an unbreakable rule, and is there any taboo around giving it to me for my studies? The treefolk chieftains all share a glance, and then it is the same elder treefolk. He raises his head to respond. It's a cultural practice. Most families will want to keep their deceased family members' bodies to assimilate into their own. If you want a body, we would have to provide one without any family members, as I doubt any of our own would part with it. Every bit of a treefolk should be recycled. I see. Interesting. Very well then, that will have to do. And you can stand up now, you've prostrated long enough. I'm not sure whether Vice Consul Loffen has relayed our message previously. One of the other treefolk chiefs speak. Oh, what is this about? It's regarding the recent gifts to the young children. While the rest of the population do benefit from it, we, the treefolk, do not really benefit from them. So is this a complaint? We're wondering whether we can get something more suited for our young saplings. Oh. Customer feedback. Now why didn't Loffen tell me about it? When was this message delivered to Vice Consul Loffen? The 3 chieftains look at each other. Last week perhaps. When she came to deliver a gift for our newest sapling. Speaking of treefolk mating and childbirth, they're actually really interesting and different from the rest of the humanoid races, although they also have humanoid-like appearances. There's actually a few ways treefolk mate, and it depends on the male, female, or whether the treefolk is a hermaphrodite, i.e. contains the mating organs of both. In short, treefolk retains their own plant-like mating systems, yet also incorporate the mating systems of humanoids. Their available ways of mating include actually having intercourse, a form of pollen fertilization where the female organs open up for the male organs to fertile, or oddly, and perhaps unique to treefolk, is via third parties, usually an insect or a carrier, like a bee or a butterfly that carries the fertilized pollens from the male organs to the female, who then, if she judges the pollens to be suitable, then allows it to fertilize him or her. Apparently it's taboo for a treefolk to self-fertilize, for the hermaphrodites, but in times of great disaster, it is permitted to keep up the treefolk numbers. There's also another external variant of mating, in which the female organ produces empty seeds, something like an unfertilized egg, which she can leave in a specified location for any interested male treefolk to then leave their seed. Most subspecies of treefolk are able to produce large quantities of such unfertilized eggs, and the decision to either go for an external or internal mating variant is a choice of the treefolk, whether the female wants quantity or quality, because internally carried treefolk will emerge much stronger, bigger, and longer lived. If the male or female is strongly magically attuned, internal mating and carrying the baby within the female also has a higher likelihood of passing off the magical talent to the child. The only plant-like reproduction system not retained by the treefolk is the grafting or cutting methods, since the soul cannot be severed in two. Only one part of the body will retain the soul, and the part without the soul will wither away without the sustenance of the soul's presence. So, given their huge variety of ways in which a baby is carried or the condition of which a new sapling is created, I could see why the humanoid childcare center is not suitable. I mean, I would have to figure out how to adapt. Ding. New subsidiary tree type unlocked, treefolk incubation pods. A subsidiary tree filled with multiple pods, used to incubate and nourish fertilized and germinating external seeds. New subsidiary tree type unlocked, treefolk nursery. Makes sapling-friendly nutrient-rich foods. Can also make special sap for pregnant treefolk mothers or females to boost quality and health of their fetus or eggs. Ah! Damn it! I keep forgetting how much the system likes these kind of stuff. I'm even betting there's extra points because they are treefolk. Maybe I'll also get new biolab equipments when I put the treefolk under the biolab. At least I have something. Chieftains, I'll have something for you soon. Spazer. Shorter chapter as I'm out of ideas. Faints also, hope the part on treefolk reproduction doesn't creep you out. Natural disasters happen, well. Because they do. I mean, a volcano or earthquake or tsunami, or wildfires, well, shit like that happens, don't they, especially when you talk about timescales of years. What is remote becomes certain over the ages. I should add a supervolcano eruption someday. There should be at least one somewhere on their world. Thanks for reading.